Before the gods ruled the sky, the world began in darkness, silence, and something older than time. Welcome, I'm glad you're here. Tonight, get comfortable, let your thoughts slow down, and drift with me into a story of myth, power, and the ancient world. If there's another legend, history, or forgotten world you want me to explore, leave it in the comments. I'd love to research it and turn it into a future sleep story for you. And tell me where in the world you're listening from tonight. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. If you enjoy stories made for sleep, myth, and history, subscribe so you don't miss the next journey. Now, let's begin with Greek mythology. Before there were gods seated on bright thrones, before there were heroes with bronze spears, before ships crossed the wine-dark sea and poets gave names to wonders, there was only the first condition of existence, a depth the Greeks called chaos. It was not chaos in the modern sense of noise and confusion, but a vast yawning gap, an open and immeasurable emptiness from which all things would come. From this beginning emerged the earliest powers of the cosmos, not born as mortals are born, but arising as first realities. Gaia came into being, the broad-breasted earth, firm foundation of all that lives and all that stands. Tartarus appeared as well, the deep abyss below the world, as far beneath the earth as the sky would later stretch above it. Eros also came, the force of desire, of attraction, of generation, the power that moves beings toward one another and makes creation possible. In some tellings, Erebus, the deep darkness, and Nyx, the night, also emerged from chaos, and from them came further presences such as Ether, the shining upper air, and Hemera, the day. These first beings were not yet a family in the ordinary sense. They were the structure of reality itself, becoming aware. Gaia, the earth, then brought forth Uranos, the sky, equal to herself in breadth so that he might cover her on every side. She also brought forth mountains, the high places where stone rises toward the heavens, and Pontos, the barren sea with its restless swelling waters. In these earliest generations, creation often happens without marriage first, as if the world is still discovering the idea of pairing. But once Uranos stretched above Gaia, heaven and earth became the first great divine union, and from their joining came the race of the Titans, the first major dynasty of divine beings. There were 12 in the most familiar account: Oceanus, the vast encircling river, Coeus, Creus, Hyperion, Iapetus, and Cronus among the males, and Theia, Rhea, Themis, Mnemosyne, Phoebe, and Tethys among the females. They were enormous presences, embodiments of cosmic domains, elder and more elemental than the gods who would later be most loved and feared by humankind. But Gaia and Uranos did not stop with the Titans. They also produced other children, and here the first note of dread enters Greek myth. There were the Cyclopes, mighty one-eyed smiths, named Brontes, Steropes, and Arges in Hesiod's tradition, beings of thunderous force and blazing craft. There were also the Hecatoncheires, the 100-handers, Cottus, Briareus, and Gyges, each with 100 arms and 50 heads, monstrous not because they were evil, but because they belonged to a world not yet tamed into familiar beauty. Uranos hated these children, or feared them, or recoiled from their strangeness. As soon as they were born, he thrust them away and hid them deep within Gaia, imprisoning them in the hollows of the earth. In this way, the first sky became also the first tyrant. The earth groaned under the burden. Gaia, who had given birth to mountains and sea, now felt pain from the children forced back into her depths. Greek myth begins very early to show that power, when ruled by fear, becomes violence against one's own house. Gaia devised a plan and fashioned a great sickle of adamant, hard and sharp beyond mortal making. She called upon her Titan children to act against their father. Most were afraid. Only the youngest Titan, Cronus, dared answer her. Hesiod presents him as crooked-counseled, a phrase suggesting cunning rather than simple bravery. He was bold enough to do what the others would not, but from the very start there is something shadowed in him, as if the son who strikes down a father under cover of darkness cannot inaugurate a fully blessed age. When Ouranos came at night to lie with Gaia, Cronus waited in ambush. At his mother's urging, he reached out with the sickle and castrated his father, severing the generative power of the sky. This is one of the most violent and unforgettable scenes in all Greek myth, not because it is random savagery, but because it establishes a pattern that will haunt the divine generations. Children overthrowing parents, succession bought through blood, fear breeding the very rebellion it tries to prevent. From the blood of Ouranos as it fell upon Gaia, other beings were born. The Erinyes arose, ancient spirits of vengeance who pursue crimes within the family, especially blood guilt. The giants came forth too, huge and warlike. Meliae, the ash tree nymphs, also sprang up, and when the severed member of Ouranos fell into the sea and white foam gathered round it, Aphrodite, in one of the best-known traditions, emerged from the waters, a goddess of beauty, desire, and irresistible attraction, already linking love to violence, generation to rupture. She came ashore first near Cythera and then Cyprus, and flowers bloomed under her feet. Ouranos, defeated, withdrew from power, though sky still arches above earth as his enduring body. Before he departed, he cursed the Titans and named them for their straining or overreaching, suggesting both their force and their doomed ambition. Cronus then became ruler among the immortals, and the first cosmic kingship passed from sky to Titan. He took his sister Rhea as wife, continuing the divine custom of sibling marriage that symbolizes beings born from the same fundamental substance. Under Cronus, the world entered what later Greeks sometimes imagined as a more ancient age, distant and grand, but his rule was never truly secure. He had seized power through violence, and what is taken by fear is usually guarded by fear. A prophecy came to Cronus, either from Gaia, from Ouranos, or from the hidden knowledge of the universe itself, that he too would be overthrown by one of his own children. Greek myth places immense weight on prophecy, not as a suggestion that can be easily escaped, but as a structure of truth around which choices tighten like knots. The attempt to avoid fate very often becomes the means by which fate is fulfilled. Cronus, determined not to suffer what he had inflicted, chose a strategy as terrible as his father's. Each time Rhea bore a child, Cronus swallowed the infant whole. First came Hestia, goddess of the hearth in the age to come, and he swallowed her. Then Demeter, who would one day govern grain and fertile earth. Then Hera, future queen of Olympus. Then Hades, destined for the underworld. Then Poseidon, lord of the sea. One by one they vanished into their father's body, not dead because gods cannot be destroyed so easily, but hidden, imprisoned, kept from birth into their full divine office. In this image, the Greeks created one of their deepest symbols, a father devouring the future to preserve the present. Cronus becomes the ruler who will not let time move forward, though in later thought his very name sometimes draws associations with time, even if that link is not original in the earliest myth. He tries to stop succession by taking all succession into himself. Rhea suffered the grief of repeated childbirth without motherhood. In many Greek stories, mothers endure the consequences of ambitions that fathers turn into policy. Like Gaia before her, Rhea sought counsel and alliance. She went to her parents, Gaia and the deposed Uranos, or in some traditions chiefly to Gaia alone, and asked how she might save her next child. They instructed her to go to Crete when the time came to give birth and to deceive Cronus. Thus, the old pattern returned with variation, one generation calling upon an older power to aid rebellion against a tyrant. When Rhea was ready to bear her sixth child, she traveled secretly to Crete, to a cave hidden on Mount Dicte or Mount Ida, depending on the version. There she gave birth to Zeus. The place matters. Greek myth often saves what is destined to rule by concealing it in the margins of the world, in caves, islands, mountains, wilderness spaces not yet visible to the reigning power. The child who will become the center must first survive in secrecy. Rhea wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes and handed it to Cronus, who, fooled by the disguise, swallowed it down, believing he had consumed another of his offspring. In later cult tradition, this stone was shown at Delphi, sacred and ancient, a physical reminder that even kings of the cosmos may be deceived. Zeus was hidden away and reared in Crete. Different traditions describe his nursing and protection in different ways, and Greek mythology often preserves multiple local memories without forcing them into a single fixed line. In one account, the nymph Amalthea nursed him, sometimes imagined as a woman, sometimes as a goat whose milk sustained the godchild. From the goat came the cornucopia, the horn of plenty, after one horn was broken and transformed into a symbol of abundance. In another thread of the tale, the Curetes, armed dancers or guardian spirits, clashed their spears against their shields and shouted around the cave whenever the baby cried, so that Cronus would not hear him. This image is powerful in its own right, warlike rhythm defending infancy, noise preserving the hidden future from the ear of tyranny. The infant king of the gods survives because others choose protection over fear. As Zeus grew, so too did the tension within the world. Cronus ruled, but his rule rested upon swallowed children, imprisoned possibilities, unresolved prophecy. Greek myth never presents such a condition as stable for long. The universe itself strains toward release. The children inside Cronus remained alive and divine. Gaia still remembered the children hidden away. The Cyclopes and Hundred-Handers, rejected by Uranos and neglected under Titan rule, still existed as forces awaiting recognition. The old crimes of the family had not vanished. They had only gone underground, and Greek myth understands that what is buried returns with greater force. Zeus matured not as a distant abstraction, but as a god already marked by intelligence, endurance, and strategic patience. His rise would not be a simple repetition of Cronus's revolt. Where Cronus used direct ambush and mutilation, Zeus would win through alliance, timing, and the release of those whom older rulers had imprisoned. This difference is important. Greek mythology does not claim that the new order is free from violence, but it does show an evolution from raw succession struggle toward a cosmos with offices, laws, and differentiated domains. Zeus is not merely stronger than Cronus. He will prove more capable of organizing a world. There are differing accounts of how Zeus first moved against his father. In one common version, he enlisted the help of Metis, a titaness associated with wisdom, counsel, and cunning intelligence. At Metis' advice, Zeus gave Cronus an emetic, sometimes described as a drug mixed in wine, causing him to disgorge the children he had swallowed. Because gods are not digested and because myth cares more for symbolic truth than literal sequence, the children emerge not as infants, but as full divine beings, reborn from confinement into their destined powers. First out, in some tellings, was the stone Cronus had swallowed last, and then came Zeus's brothers and sisters. In another tradition, Zeus cut open Cronus, though the emetic version became more common. However it happened, the essential thing is the same. The future trapped within the tyrant was released. The stone, vomited up and set at Delphi, became a marker of transition. Delphi would later become the navel of the world, the place of Apollo's oracle. But even before Apollo, it held an older sacredness. The object that Cronus mistook for a child becomes the witness of his undoing. Greek myth delights in such reversals, where deception once used to save a life becomes proof that power can be blinded by its own appetite. Once freed, the children of Rhea stood with Zeus against the Titans. Yet the struggle to come, the Titanomachy, would require more than a family reunion. Zeus descended into the depths and released the Cyclopes and the 100-handers, the very beings earlier rulers had feared and chained away. This act is one of the defining signs of his kingship. He does not maintain power by suppressing every dangerous force. He recognizes strength in what others call monstrous and turns exclusion into alliance. The Cyclopes, grateful for their freedom, forged gifts for the younger gods. To Zeus they gave the thunderbolt, the blazing weapon that would become the signature of his sovereignty. To Poseidon they gave the trident, mastery of the sea's upheaval and calm. To Hades they gave the helmet of invisibility, by which he could move unseen and embody the hidden realm of the dead. The 100-handers also joined Zeus, bringing terrifying martial force to the coming war. Here, the younger gods took shape not only as persons, but as offices. Zeus became associated with sky, storm, and royal authority, Poseidon with the sea and seismic power, Hades with the underworld and the wealth hidden in the earth. Hera, Demeter, Hestia, and the others would each later receive their own honors and domains. Greek mythology is moving, even in the midst of cosmic conflict, toward a more articulated order. But before order comes war. The Titanomachy, the war between the Olympians and the Titans, would last for 10 years in the traditional account. It was not a skirmish, but a cosmic convulsion, the old regime of the world hurling itself against the new. The Titans fought from Mount Othrys, while Zeus and his allies established themselves on Olympus, the mountain that would become the eternal seat of the gods. Thunder shook heaven, sea and earth trembled, fire flashed across the world. The old generation, vast and ancient, did not yield easily. Yet Zeus, armed with the thunderbolt and supported by the freed powers that Cronus and Ouranos had tried to suppress, now stood ready to strike not just at a father, but at an entire age. The war between the Titans and the rising Olympians did not unfold as a single decisive clash, but as a long and grinding struggle that seemed to stretch across the very fabric of existence. For 10 years, according to the ancient poets, the conflict raged without resolution. The mountains shook, the seas recoiled, and the sky itself trembled beneath the force of divine power. This was not a war of mortals with clear beginnings and endings, but a slow unraveling of one age and the violent birth of another. On one side stood the Titans, ancient and immense, beings who had ruled since the earliest shaping of the world. Cronus, though no longer unchallenged, still commanded authority among them. With him were many of his siblings, each representing vast and fundamental aspects of reality. They fought not only for power, but for the continuation of a world they understood, a world in which they had always reigned. On the other side stood Zeus and his allies, the younger gods who had only just emerged into their full strength. They were fewer in number at first, but not in potential. Zeus himself had grown into a figure of formidable presence, not only powerful but deliberate. He was not simply reacting against Cronus, he was shaping something new, something that had not yet existed in the cosmos, a structured order where power would be divided, defined, and maintained through rule rather than fear alone. Yet even Zeus could not win this war through strength alone. The Titans were too vast, too deeply rooted in the foundations of the world. The conflict reached a stalemate, neither side able to fully overcome the other. It was then that Zeus turned again to the depths, to the forgotten and the imprisoned, understanding that victory would not come from repeating the past, but from transforming it. He descended into the dark places beneath the earth, where the Cyclopes and the 100-handers had long been held in confinement. These beings had been rejected by the previous rulers, feared for their form and their power. But Zeus did not see them as monsters. He saw them as forces that had been denied their place. When he freed them, the balance of the war began to shift. The Cyclopes, grateful and fierce, brought their craft to the side of the Olympians. They forged weapons not of simple metal, but of divine force. To Zeus, they gave the thunderbolt, a weapon that carried not just destructive power, but authority, the very sound and flash of the sky's will. When Zeus would later wield it, it would not merely strike. It would declare dominance, a signal that the heavens themselves answered to him. To Poseidon, they gave the trident, a weapon that could stir the oceans, raise storms, and shatter the earth beneath the waves. And to Hades, they gave the helm of darkness, granting him the ability to move unseen, to exist between presence and absence, a fitting symbol for the ruler he would become. The 100-handers, with their overwhelming strength, joined the battle as living engines of war. Each could hurl countless boulders at once, their sheer force turning the tide in ways the Titans could not easily counter. Where the Titans had once seemed unshakable, they now faced an enemy that had learned to wield not just power, but strategy. The war intensified. Thunder crashed across the heavens as Zeus unleashed his weapon again and again, the sky splitting with light. The sea roared under Poseidon's command, rising and collapsing in violent waves. The earth itself trembled as the 100-handers hurled their endless storm of stone. Fire, wind, water, and earth collided in a chaos far greater than the primordial state from which the world had first emerged. The Titans fought back with equal fury. These were not weak or fading beings. They were the original rulers of existence. The clash between the two sides was not simply a battle of strength, but of eras. Each strike carried the weight of time itself, the past resisting the future forcing its way into being. At last, the turning point came. With the combined force of the Olympians and their allies, Zeus overwhelmed the Titans. The relentless assault of thunder and stone broke their defenses, and one by one, they were forced into defeat. Cronus himself, who had once swallowed his children to prevent this very moment, now stood powerless against the sun he had tried to erase. There was no reconciliation. The Titans were cast down into Tartarus, the deep abyss far beneath the earth, a place as distant below the world as the sky is above it. It was not merely a prison, but a separation from the living order of the cosmos. There they were bound and confined, guarded by the very beings who had helped overthrow them. The 100-handers stood watch, ensuring that the old rulers would never rise again. This was not the end of all Titans, however. Some did not fight against Zeus and were not punished. Oceanus, for instance, remained apart from the conflict, continuing his endless flow around the world. Others would still play roles in the unfolding myths. But the age of Titan rule was over. In its place, a new order began to take shape. Zeus, now the undisputed ruler of the gods, did not claim everything for himself. This is where his reign differed most significantly from that of Cronus. Instead of hoarding power, he divided it. The world was apportioned among the three brothers. Zeus took dominion over the sky, becoming the ruler of the heavens and the wielder of storms. Poseidon took the sea, ruling over its depths and tempests. Hades took the underworld, becoming the lord of the dead and the hidden wealth beneath the earth. The earth itself and Olympus above it would be shared among the gods. This division was not random. It reflected a new understanding of balance. The sky, the sea, and the underworld were distinct realms, each requiring its own ruler. Power was no longer concentrated in a single figure who feared succession. Instead, it was distributed among those who had earned it, bound by both kinship and necessity. Yet even in this new order, the seeds of tension remained. The Greek gods, though immortal, were not free from conflict, jealousy, or desire. Zeus himself, though more just than Cronus, was not without flaws. His rule would bring stability, but not perfection. The world he governed would be filled with stories of love and betrayal, of creation and destruction, of heroes rising and falling under the watchful eyes of the divine. But for now, there was a moment, brief and fragile, of triumph. The Olympians ascended to Mount Olympus, establishing their home at the peak of the world. From there, they would watch over gods and mortals alike, shaping the fate of all who lived beneath them. The age of the Olympians had begun. And yet, far below, in the depths of Tartarus, the defeated Titans remained, not destroyed, not forgotten, only waiting. When the Titans had been cast down, and the long violence of succession had at last given way to a new order, the world did not become quiet all at once. Greek mythology does not imagine peace as the simple absence of struggle. Instead, peace must be established, shaped, and maintained. It must be given form. The victory of Zeus and his allies was not the end of the story, but the beginning of the difficult work of rule. A cosmos that had once lurched from birth to confinement, from ambush to overthrow, now needed boundaries, honors, and laws. The younger gods had won the war, but what they would make of that victory remained to be seen. So the Olympian age began not merely with triumph, but with arrangement. The first and most essential act after victory was the division of realms. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, the three brothers who had been swallowed by Cronus and later freed, did not contest endlessly over every portion of existence. In one of the most important turns in Greek myth, they drew lots for their dominions. The sky went to Zeus, the sea to Poseidon, and the underworld to Hades. The earth, with lofty Olympus upon it, remained in a sense common to all, though Zeus, as king of gods and men, held the highest authority over the cosmic order as a whole. This division matters because it marks a movement away from total possession. Cronus had swallowed his children because he could not imagine sharing power. Zeus, whatever his later faults, built his reign on distribution. The sky suited him. Zeus became the lord of cloud, thunder, lightning, storm, and the bright upper air. But his power was never only meteorological. He was not simply a weather god. He became the guardian of kingship, oath, guest friendship, assembly, and justice. To the Greeks, the ruler of heaven was also the guarantor of order among gods and mortals. Lightning was not only force, it was judgment. A thunderclap could signify divine displeasure. Clear weather under the open vault of heaven could suggest the watchfulness of a god whose authority extended from mountain peak to palace court. Poseidon took the sea, and the sea in Greek imagination was never a mild or secondary thing. For a people living among islands, peninsulas, straits, and coasts, the sea was road, danger, livelihood, and mystery all at once. Poseidon ruled its swelling power, its rage, and its hidden depths. He was also called Earthshaker, for the Greeks linked him with earthquakes as well as with horses, another expression of untamed force and aristocratic energy. The sea could sustain life and destroy it in the same hour, and so its god remained magnificent, necessary, and deeply unpredictable. Hades drew the underworld, the kingdom beneath the earth where the dead would go. Although later imagination often treats this allotment as somehow lesser, Greek myth does not present Hades as a failed claimant or a dark embarrassment among his brothers. He received a realm vast and inescapable, a domain no mortal would avoid forever. He ruled what lies beyond life, and with it, the hidden wealth of the earth, for precious metals and fertile depths also belong beneath the ground. His kingdom was not a place of casual evil. It was the place of finality, distance, and unreturning law. Once these portions had been assigned, Olympus rose in mythic consciousness as the seat of divine society. Mount Olympus, the highest mountain in Greece, became more than a physical summit. In poetry, it was clear above storms, untouched by rain, snow, or ordinary weather, a realm of brightness where the gods dwelt in shining halls. There, according to Homeric vision, they feasted, conversed, argued, loved, plotted, and watched the world below. The mountain was both part of Greece and beyond Greece, at once imaginable and inaccessible. It stood as the nearest point between the human and the divine, a place of nearness that still remained out of reach. Upon Olympus, the gods began to assume the forms by which later generations would know them. Hestia, eldest of Cronus and Rhea's children in one reckoning, took her place as goddess of the hearth, the unmoving sacred center of house and city. She is one of the quietest among the Olympians, and yet one of the most essential. The hearth fire was where food was cooked, offerings were made, and family continuity was maintained. Hestia does not dominate the myths with dramatic adventures, but her stillness is itself divine. In a religion filled with motion, conflict, seduction, war, and wandering, she represents permanence. Every household flame, every civic hearth carried something of her holiness. Demeter, another of the children once hidden inside Cronus, came into her power as goddess of grain, agriculture, and cultivated fertility. Gaia is the earth itself, broad and primordial, but Demeter belongs to the earth as human beings live from it, planted, harvested, depended upon season after season. If Zeus represented order from above, Demeter represented nourishment from below, the human bond with the land that feeds. Her importance in Greek life cannot be overstated. Grain was survival, and survival bound mortals to the rhythms of divine favor. Hera, sister and wife of Zeus, became queen of the gods. Her marriage to Zeus was not merely a domestic arrangement, but a cosmic institution, establishing the divine pattern of lawful union, royalty dei, and legitimate succession. Yet Hera's myths are often shadowed by Zeus's unfaithfulness, and by her own fierce responses to it. This should not be mistaken for pettiness. In Greek myth, Hera defends the dignity of marriage in a divine household where marriage is constantly threatened by the king's desire. Her anger is often terrible, but it is rooted in violation. She stands for queenship, sovereignty beside sovereignty, and the dangerous seriousness of vows. Zeus himself, now enthroned, was not left unchallenged simply because the Titans had fallen. Greek mythology is too aware of instability to imagine that one victory settles all things forever. New rule must prove itself. Old powers remain in the world. Grievances persist. The very act of becoming king invites resistance, especially in a cosmos shaped by earlier rebellions. One of the first threats to the new order came not from a Titan army, but from the monstrous children of Earth. Gaia, though she had once aided Zeus against Cronus, did not bless every outcome of the war without reserve. In some traditions, angered by the fate of her Titan children cast into Tartarus, she brought forth the giants, enormous beings of violent force who rose against the Olympians. Their struggle against the gods, known as the Gigantomachy, belongs to the next wave of cosmic conflict, and though its details vary across sources, its meaning is clear. The earth itself can produce opposition when balance becomes pain. Even rightful rule does not erase the cost of war. In many accounts, the giants hurled rocks and blazing trees against heaven. The Olympians fought back with all their powers, but prophecy declared that the giants could not be fully defeated without the help of a mortal. Thus Heracles, born much later in the divine chronology but folded into the mythic logic of the struggle, became necessary to the gods' victory. This is one of the first major signs that the worlds of gods and men are not separate stories. They are already intertwined. Divine order will depend at key moments on mortal action. Yet before heroes rose in the mortal world, the divine household itself continued to expand. Zeus would father many children, not only through Hera, but through other goddesses, nymphs, and mortal women. These births would shape nearly every branch of Greek myth. The Greeks did not hide the complexity of this. Zeus is the upholder of order and also its disruptor. He founds structures and breaks boundaries. He protects oaths and also causes the crises that oaths must answer. This contradiction lies at the heart of his character. One of the most important stories from this period concerns Metis, the wise Titaness, whose counsel had helped Zeus in his rise against Cronus. Zeus took Metis as his first wife or consort in many traditions, but a prophecy came that she would bear 2 children, first a daughter of surpassing wisdom, and then a son destined to overthrow his father. The pattern threatened to return. Zeus, remembering too well what prophecy had done to the generations before him, chose not to repeat Cronus's exact mistake, but he acted with familiar fear. He swallowed Metis while she was pregnant, taking her into himself. Here again, Greek myth gives us a ruler trying to contain the future within his own body, but the outcome differs. Zeus does not simply imprison a rival. What is hidden within him becomes transformed. In time, he was seized with a great pain in the head, and when Hephaestus, or in some versions Prometheus or another divine figure, split his skull open with an axe, Athena sprang forth fully armed, shining in helmet and spear with a cry that astonished heaven and earth. She was not born from a mother's labor in the ordinary way, but from the head of the king of gods, and the symbolism is unmistakable. Wisdom, warcraft, intelligence, and disciplined skill emerge from divine kingship when joined to swallowed counsel. Yet Metis is not erased. She remains, in a sense, inside Zeus as wisdom internalized. Athena becomes the daughter of strategy, reason, and sovereign mind. Athena's place among the Olympians was immediate and immense. She was not a goddess of war in the sense of bloodlust or berserk rage. That belonged more properly to Ares. Athena governed strategic warfare, civic intelligence, crafts, and disciplined action. She was associated with weaving, with planning, with protection of cities, above all Athens, which would later claim her as its special patron. In Athena, the Greeks imagined a power both martial and rational, fierce but never chaotic. Her emergence from Zeus's head marks one of the great defining moments of the Olympian order. Force must now be guided by mind. Another key divine child of Zeus came through Hera alone, in some traditions as a response to Athena's strange birth. Hera, angered that Zeus had produced Athena without her, conceived Hephaestus by herself, though in other versions he is the son of both Zeus and Hera. Hephaestus was the god of fire in its crafted form, of smithing, metallurgy, and divine workmanship. Unlike the radiant beauty of Apollo or the imposing grace of Zeus, Hephaestus is often marked by physical imperfection. He is lame, and in some stories, Hera cast him from heaven because she was ashamed of him, while in others, Zeus hurled him from Olympus during a quarrel, and his fall made him lame. However the injury came, Hephaestus embodies a recurring Greek truth. Power and beauty are not identical. The divine smith creates wonders that others wield. Thrones, shields, jewels, automatons, and palaces emerge from his labor. He is master of transformative fire, turning raw matter into form. The Olympian order, then, was not only political but technological in mythic imagination. Under Hephaestus's hammer, civilization itself became imaginable. The gods were no longer merely primordial beings wrestling in darkness. They now possessed architecture, weapons, ornaments, and tools. Olympus became a court with crafted splendor. The universe was being furnished, and still more gods took their places. Apollo, son of Zeus and Leto, would become one of the most many-sided and beloved of the Olympians, though his full arrival belongs to a later chapter of divine expansion. Even so, the foundations of his importance were already being laid in the early Olympian age. He would be lord of archery, prophecy, healing, plague, music, and radiant youth, a god of terrible precision and luminous order. His twin sister Artemis, also child of Zeus and Leto, would become the goddess of the hunt, wilderness, wild animals, and maidenhood, moving through forests and mountains untouched by the domestic world. Together they represent a kind of balanced duality: Apollo of the measured lyre and prophetic shrine, Artemis of the moonlit wild and the swift arrow. Hermes, too, entered the growing divine family, son of Zeus and Maia, daughter of Atlas. From the beginning, he was a boundary crosser, a trickster, a guide, and a god of movement. He oversaw travelers, heralds, trade, cunning, and theft, and he alone moved easily between worlds, including the underworld. If Hestia was the unmoving center, Hermes was the road itself. In him, the Olympian order gained flexibility, intelligence, and the capacity for mediation. Ares, son of Zeus and Hera, took shape as the raw fury of war, the delight in conflict, the shout, clash, and blood heat of battle. He was less admired in many Greek traditions than Athena because the Greeks did not romanticize violence without measure. Yet Ares remained fully divine, because war in its savage immediacy is also part of reality. The Olympian pantheon does not suppress unpleasant truths, it gives them faces and names. Aphrodite, whether born from the sea foam around the severed member of Uranus or counted in some traditions as daughter of Zeus and Dione, held her place as the irresistible force of beauty, attraction, desire, and erotic power. She could bend gods and mortals alike, unsettling plans, undoing reason, creating generations, wars, betrayals, and delights. If Athena emerged from the head, Aphrodite rose from the sea. Mind and desire, both indispensable, both dangerous, now stood within the same divine order. Dionysus, in the fuller sweep of Greek mythology, would arrive somewhat later and in a more unusual way, but his future place was already a kind of promise latent in the world. Ecstasy, wine, theater, dissolving boundaries, the divine that enters through joy and madness rather than law. His eventual acceptance on Olympus would reveal that the Olympian order was never only about restraint. It also had to accommodate the energies that break the self open. All this expansion of divine identity gives the impression of smooth establishment, but the myths preserve many signs of instability beneath the surface. Zeus's kingship was stronger than Cronus's because it was broader, more relational, more capable of giving each power its sphere. Yet Zeus remained keenly aware that sovereignty is fragile. He punished rebellion swiftly. He monitored prophecy closely. He relied on allies, marriages, and strategic unions. In this sense, he was not unlike a Greek king magnified to cosmic scale, ruling through force, honor, diplomacy, and ever-renewed legitimacy. One of the clearest examples of this appears in the story of Theseus and Minotaur, both Titanesses who joined with Zeus without threatening his rule. Theseus, associated with divine order, custom, and rightful arrangement, bore the Hore and, in some traditions, the Moirai. The Hore, often named Eunomia, Dike, and Irene, represented good order, justice, and peace, showing that stable rule requires more than raw authority. Mnemosyne, memory, bore the Muses, divine patrons of song, poetry, and inspired speech. This is deeply revealing. Under Zeus's order, justice and memory become fertile. The world of Olympus is not only a military victory, it is the beginning of culture. Law and song are both children of divine kingship when it is functioning properly. The Muses would later inspire poets to tell the very myths by which the gods were remembered. That too is part of the order. A cosmos becomes stable not only when it is ruled, but when it is narrated. To remember the gods is to participate in the pattern they sustain. The Greeks understood that memory is sacred because forgetting unravels identity. In making the Muses daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne, myth ties power to story, authority to song. But if the divine realm was growing into complexity, the mortal realm remained comparatively undeveloped in the great sequence of myth. The gods had their thrones, their powers, their rivalries, and their offices. Human beings, by contrast, had not yet fully entered the center of the narrative. That would change soon, and when it did, the relationship between gods and mortals would become the heart of Greek mythology. For now, however, the stage was being prepared. Olympus was becoming a court from which attention would eventually turn downward toward humanity. And in that court, hierarchy mattered. Zeus sat highest, but not alone. Hera at his side embodied marriage and royal legitimacy. Athena stood near him as wisdom and strategy. Apollo would become his clear-voiced instrument of prophecy. Hermes moved between command and communication. Demeter ensured survival. Hestia sanctified the hearth. Poseidon and Hades, though dwelling primarily in their own domains, remained brothers within the larger divine family. This was not equality, but it was order. Each divine power had a role. Even conflict now occurred within a system. That system, however, remained vulnerable to the old truth that Greek myth never lets us forget. Power creates resentment. Desire crosses boundaries. Fate speaks before its hour. The gods themselves are immortal, but their relationships are always in motion. Love will disturb peace. Pride will offend heaven. Cleverness will challenge authority. The world below, still waiting for its full mythic awakening, will soon become the testing ground of all these tensions. For now, though, Olympus shone in its new majesty. The halls of the gods were bright, nectar was poured, ambrosia was shared, divine laughter echoed across the mountain. The thunderbolt rested in Zeus's hand, not as a weapon in constant use, but as the emblem of rule. The sea moved beneath Poseidon's trident. The dead remained in the shadowed kingdom of Hades. The hearth burned under Hestia's quiet care. Grain ripened under Demeter's blessing. Marriage wore Hera's crown. Wisdom bore Athena's spear. The cosmos had been divided, named, and enthroned. The old war was over. The new world was ready. Once the gods had taken their places upon Olympus and the world had begun to settle into recognizable forms, attention turned little by little toward a different kind of being. The heavens had rulers. The seas had a lord. The dead had a kingdom prepared for them, though as yet the great multitudes of humanity had not fully filled it. The fields were ready for grain, the hearth for fire, the lyre for song, and the mountain peaks for sacrifice. But a world ordered only for gods is not yet the world most Greek myth remembers. Greek mythology comes fully alive when divine power meets mortal fragility, when beings who can die begin to live under the gaze of beings who cannot. The story of that meeting begins in one of its most important forms, with Prometheus. Prometheus was a titan, but not one who shared the final ruin of Cronus's rebellion in the same way as the great enemies of Zeus. He belonged to an older generation and yet moved within the new order, a figure of intelligence, foresight, and dangerous sympathy. His name is often linked to forethought, and whether the Greeks first felt that meaning strongly in every retelling or not, it suits him with almost unsettling perfection. He is one who looks ahead, who calculates consequences, who sees what is coming before others do. In a mythology where so many beings are driven by appetite, pride, passion, and immediate force, Prometheus stands apart as a creature of mind. But Greek myth rarely lets intelligence remain innocent. The clever are often admirable and perilous at once. In some traditions, Prometheus took part in shaping humankind itself. The details vary across ancient sources, as Greek mythology often preserves several streams of memory at once. Yet one of the most enduring images is that Prometheus fashioned human beings from earth and water, molding them from clay as a potter might shape a vessel, though what emerged was not a vessel but a race. This image is fitting for Greek thought. Human beings belong to the earth. They are not pure spirit, nor are they divine in origin as the gods are. They are made from what lies underfoot, from dust and moisture, from matter that can crack, wither, and return to the ground. And yet in the hands of Prometheus, this earthly substance receives form, and form suggests intention. Humanity is not an accident wandering into the cosmos. It is shaped into being. Sometimes Athena is said to have breathed life into the figures that Prometheus made. Even where that detail is absent, the idea hovers nearby, because human life in Greek myth is never merely clay. Something more than matter animates the mortal frame. Breath, awareness, movement, language, memory, fear, longing, all enter into this new race. The Greeks did not describe human origins in the same way every poet or local tradition, but they consistently return to a central truth. Humanity stands between worlds. Mortals are made from the earth, yet they lift their eyes to heaven. They hunger, age, and die, yet they think about justice, sacrifice, beauty, and the names of gods. They are small and brief, but capable of art, grief, cunning, and reverence. That tension is the root of Greek myth's fascination with mankind. Prometheus did not simply shape humans and then withdraw. He became, in many tellings, their champion or patron, the divine mind most willing to place itself on the side of mortal need. This made him unusual. The Olympians would demand worship, punish insolence, love particular heroes, and intervene constantly in human life. But Prometheus seems to care for humanity more generally, not merely as worshippers, but as vulnerable beings at a disadvantage in the universe. He sees what mortals lack. He sees that they are exposed to cold, darkness, hunger, ignorance, and the overwhelming superiority of the gods. And from that perception grows the act that will define him. Before that famous gift of fire, however, another crucial encounter took place, one that reveals how fragile the relationship between gods and mortals already was. At Mycone, later called Sicyon, Prometheus arranged a division of a sacrificial ox, and this event became the mythical explanation for why human beings in Greek ritual burn bones and fat for the gods while keeping the edible meat for themselves. Prometheus slaughtered the animal and divided it into two portions. In one pile he placed the nourishing flesh and entrails, concealed beneath the unappealing stomach. In the other, he arranged the bare bones, gleaming white, covered with rich, shining fat, so that the portion looked desirable from the outside. Then Zeus was invited to choose. The scene is almost quiet compared with the storms and battles of earlier mythology, but it is full of significance. This is no longer a struggle over cosmic kingship. It is a negotiation over the terms of human religion. How shall mortals give to gods? What belongs to heaven and what remains on earth? Prometheus, siding with humankind, sets a trap in the form of ritual arrangement. Zeus chooses the bones veiled in fat, whether because he is tricked or because, in some accounts, he sees through the trick and accepts it in order to create the conditions for future conflict. Ancient poets themselves preserve both possibilities. If Zeus is deceived, then even the king of gods can be outmaneuvered for a moment by cunning intelligence. If he knowingly accepts the false choice, then he permits the trick because it will justify punishment and establish the harder boundaries between divine and mortal life. Greek myth often leaves room for both interpretations, and that ambiguity is part of its depth. From that moment, the pattern of sacrifice was set. The gods would receive smoke, aroma, the burning bones wrapped in fat, while humans would keep the meat for their own nourishment. Greek religion later reenacted this arrangement in countless rituals. Myth thus explains custom, but it does more than explain. It reveals something profound about the structure of existence. Mortals can approach the divine, but not by giving everything. There is always separation. The gods are honored by transformation, by what rises upward in fire and smoke, not by sharing mortal hunger directly. Human life remains earthbound even in worship. Zeus was angered by Prometheus's trick, whether because his pride had been wounded or because the Titan had attempted to manipulate the divine order in favor of mankind. In response, he withheld fire from human beings. This punishment is easy to overlook if one thinks of fire only as warmth or light, but for the Greeks it represented nearly everything that lifts humanity above helplessness. Fire cooks food, tempers metal, hardens clay, gives warmth in winter, drives back darkness, and makes craft possible. Without fire, there is no forging, no kiln, no proper hearth, no illuminated gathering after sunset. To take fire away is to leave mortals in a condition close to animal vulnerability, shivering under the night, unable to transform the materials around them into tools, weapons, homes, and art. Prometheus saw this deprivation and would not accept it. Here his defining rebellion takes shape. He ascended, in some tellings, to heaven itself, or approached the chariot of the sun and stole fire back for humankind. The image most often remembered is that he hid the stolen flame in a fennel stalk, carrying the ember concealed within it down from the divine realm to the world of mortals. It is one of the great symbolic acts in all mythology. Knowledge or power taken from above and delivered below through cleverness, secrecy, and risk. Fire in human hands becomes more than a physical resource. It becomes a sign that the boundary between gods and men can be crossed, though not without cost. When humans received fire, the world changed. One can almost imagine the first night in mythic consciousness when darkness no longer ruled completely, when a hearth burned steadily and faces gathered around it. Fire turned raw meat into food fit for settled life. It allowed metallurgy to awaken. It made sacrifice itself possible in the proper form, linking human worship to divine expectation. The gift was practical and sacred at once. Prometheus had not merely offered comfort, he had accelerated civilization. And Zeus, seeing smoke once more rise from mortal hearths, knew at once what had happened. The punishment that followed was among the most severe in Greek myth, not because Prometheus had attacked Olympus with force, but because he had undermined hierarchy with intelligence and compassion. Zeus ordered him seized and bound to a remote crag, often identified in later imagination with the Caucasus, at the edge of the world. There, Prometheus was chained against the rock, stretched out beneath the open sky, unable to escape, unable to die. Each day an eagle, child or instrument of Zeus, came to tear at his liver. Each night the organ grew back, and each morning the torment began again. The horror of this punishment lies partly in its repetition. Greek myth understands that endless recurrence can be worse than a single wound. Prometheus is not destroyed. He is preserved in suffering. The body renews itself only so that pain may return. And because the liver was thought to be a seat of life and feeling, the punishment strikes not an accidental part, but a symbolic center. Zeus punishes forethought with perpetual helplessness, generosity with exposure, cleverness with immobilization. Prometheus, who looked ahead, is now fixed in place, enduring time without release. Yet even in punishment, Prometheus remains more than victim. He possesses knowledge Zeus still values or fears. In later traditions, Prometheus knows a prophecy concerning a union that might produce a son greater than his father, a familiar danger in divine history. This means that even chained, he holds something the king of gods cannot simply wrench from him by force. Intelligence survives punishment. The body may be bound, but knowledge remains inward and sovereign. This gives Prometheus a strange dignity on the rock. He suffers, but he does not become small. For mortals, meanwhile, the theft of fire did not lead to untroubled prosperity. Greek myth almost never allows a gift to come without an answering burden. Humanity received power, but Zeus had not exhausted his response. He would send to men not the removal of fire, but something more subtle and enduring, a gift shaped as beauty, carrying within it affliction. Thus begins the story of Pandora. Zeus ordered Hephaestus, divine craftsman, to fashion a woman from earth. Here, the myth deliberately echoes the making of mankind from clay, but it introduces a crucial shift. This new being would not arise naturally from the mortal race. She would be made by divine intention as part of a response, a counterstroke in the struggle over human destiny. Hephaestus shaped her form, and the other gods contributed their powers. Athena clothed and adorned her, teaching works associated with women and skill. Aphrodite poured over her charm, desire, and grace. Hermes gave her speech, persuasion, and in some accounts a mind both cunning and shameless. Each god supplied something, and for this reason she was called Pandora, often understood as all-gifted, the one to whom all the gods gave gifts. At first glance, she seems like a masterpiece, radiant and irresistible. The myth lingers on her adornment because Greek storytelling knows the force of appearances. Beauty can conceal danger not because beauty is evil, but because desire weakens judgment. The gods make Pandora attractive precisely because she is meant to be welcomed. She is divine craftsmanship turned toward consequence. Zeus then sent her to Epimetheus, brother of Prometheus. His name is often associated with afterthought, the opposite of Prometheus's foresight, and the contrast is sharp enough that it must be intentional in the mythic tradition. Prometheus had warned his brother never to accept a gift from Zeus. But Epimetheus, seeing Pandora, either forgot the warning or surrendered to wonder. He accepted her. In that act, Greek myth says something severe about humanity. Mortals are not ruined only from without. They participate in their own suffering through failure to foresee, failure to resist, failure to understand what beauty may conceal when sent by offended power. The familiar later version speaks of Pandora receiving a jar, though later European retellings often call it a box. In the Greek imagination, it was a pythos, a large storage jar, the kind that held grain, wine, oil, or other essential goods of settled life. That detail matters. The vessel belongs to the household world, the sphere of preservation and daily necessity. It is not some magical object foreign to ordinary existence. It is part of domestic life itself, which makes what follows more intimate and unsettling. Pandora opened the jar, whether from curiosity, persuasion, divine compulsion, or simply because that was always the design. Out flew the countless troubles that would henceforth afflict humankind: toil, sickness, pain, old age, grief, and all the unnamed sorrows that wear down mortal life. Before this, some traditions imply humanity had lived in a state less burdened, closer to ease, not wholly free of death perhaps, but not yet crushed by the full weight of suffering. Once the jar was opened, however, misery dispersed into the world and could not be recalled. Illness entered households, labor became necessary, bodies weakened, minds filled with care. Life became the fragile and troubled condition the Greeks knew so well. Only hope remained inside when Pandora closed the jar again. Much has been debated in antiquity and after about what this means. Is hope preserved for human comfort, kept safe so that mankind will not be entirely overwhelmed? Or is hope itself withheld, trapped in the jar while all other evils roam free, leaving mortals with only longing and uncertainty? Greek myth often leaves such matters unresolved, and perhaps that is appropriate. Hope itself is ambiguous. It comforts, but it can also prolong endurance in a hard world without guaranteeing rescue. What is certain is that after Pandora, human existence is never again imagined as unshadowed. Mortal life becomes defined by mixture, pleasure and pain, beauty and loss, birth and funeral smoke, harvest and famine, marriage song and lament. This sequence of Prometheus and Pandora forms one of the deepest meditations in Greek mythology on what it means to be human. Humanity receives fire, which means skill, culture, craft, and the beginning of civilization. But humanity also receives suffering in its multiplied forms. Progress and pain arrive together. There is no golden gift without burden. Knowledge increases vulnerability even as it increases power. This is not a myth of simple punishment, nor one of simple liberation. It is a myth of condition. To be human is to live between Prometheus and Pandora, between stolen fire and open sorrow. And yet Greek mythology does not treat mankind as merely pitiable. The very same race that now labors, sickens, and dies is also capable of reverence, invention, story, sacrifice, and memory. Fire allows human beings to become makers. Suffering forces them to become thinkers. Mortality gives urgency to love, ambition, and prayer. The gods remain above, but mortals now truly enter the moral and emotional center of the mythic world. Their weakness is what makes them interesting. Their brevity is what makes them tragic. Their capacity to endure is what makes them noble. The poets later developed these themes further in the myths of the ages of man. In Hesiod's telling, humanity passed through successive races or ages: the golden, silver, bronze, the age of heroes, and the Iron Age in which the poet himself lived. Though these traditions are not always woven directly into the Prometheus story, they belong to the same broad effort to explain why human life feels diminished from some imagined earlier condition. The golden race lived in ease and harmony under Cronus, free from hard labor and grievous old age. The later races declined, growing harsher, more violent, more burdened. By the time of the Iron Age, life had become a field of struggle, injustice, exhaustion, and continual worry. The myth of Pandora fits this sensibility perfectly. It explains why the world, though structured and fertile, is also relentlessly hard. Prometheus's suffering, however, did not endure forever in every tradition. Greek myth is rarely content with endless punishment unless punishment itself is the final moral shape of a character, as with some notorious offenders in the underworld. Prometheus, though rebellious, remains too significant and too complex to be left outside redemption entirely. In many later accounts, Heracles, the great hero born of Zeus, eventually passed by the rock where Prometheus was chained and shot the eagle with an arrow, thus freeing the Titan from his torment. Zeus allowed this, or accepted it, perhaps because enough time had passed, perhaps because prophecy had shifted, perhaps because the ruler of gods could afford mercy once his sovereignty was secure. The detail matters. Even the punishment of Prometheus becomes part of a larger mythic arc in which divine authority and benefaction toward humanity are never wholly fixed in one form. Still, in the age we are now entering, Prometheus remains chained in memory as the one who dared to alter the balance between gods and mortals. He is not a simple hero in the modern sense, because Greek myth distrusts simplicity. He tricked Zeus. He defied the divine hierarchy. He caused consequences not only for himself, but for all humanity. Yet he also gave what men needed most to become human in the richest sense. He stands for the dangerous mercy of intelligence, the willingness to suffer for a gift delivered to the weak. Pandora too deserves more than the shallow blame later ages often placed upon her. In the older Greek vision, she is not merely an individual woman making a foolish choice. She is the embodiment of a divine condition set upon human life. Through her, beauty and suffering become intertwined. Through her, household life becomes the scene where joy and affliction mingle inseparably. She is fashioned, sent, welcomed, and only then becomes the occasion by which the sorrows of existence are released. The myth reflects Greek anxieties about desire, marriage, labor, and the unpredictability of daily life, but beneath all that, it is really asking a more enduring question. Why is life full of trouble? And why do trouble and attraction come in the same form so often? By the end of these stories, the world has changed more profoundly than after the Titanomachy alone. Zeus's victory established rule among the gods. Prometheus's fire and Pandora's jar established the human condition. Now, the mortal race stands fully inside the universe of myth, gifted, burdened, exposed, creative, sorrowing, and always observed by powers above itself. Hearth smoke rises, fields are worked, metal glows in the forge, prayers are spoken, children are born into a world where suffering is now ordinary and hope uncertain, yet still present in some form, however concealed. The stage is set for the darker and more intimate myths of human loss, divine desire, and the boundaries between life and death. Now that human life had entered the world in its full mixture of labor, beauty, fear, and endurance, Greek mythology turned toward one of the deepest boundaries any mortal can face, the boundary between life and death, presence and loss, sunlight, and the hidden world below the earth. The Olympians ruled above, and mortals moved under their gaze, but no account of the world could ever be complete until the Greeks had imagined what lay beneath their feet, where the dead go, what powers govern that realm, and how the turning of the seasons themselves might be bound to grief. In Greek myth, these things are not separate. The underworld is not only the destination of souls, it is tied to fertility, to mourning, to the rhythm of the year, and to the love between mother and child. The story that reveals this most fully is the story of Hades and Persephone. Hades, after the division of the cosmos, had received the realm beneath the earth. He was brother to Zeus and Poseidon, equal in divine origin though different in domain. To later imaginations, he is often reduced to a figure of horror, almost as though he were the Greek equivalent of a devil. But that is not how Greek mythology presents him. Hades is stern, distant, and unyielding, but not the embodiment of evil. He rules the dead because all mortals must die. His kingdom is the inevitable destination of human life, not a special prison for the wicked alone. He is feared because death is feared, and because his realm lies beyond return. He is not loved in the way Apollo or Dionysus might be loved, nor does he move among gods and men with easy familiarity, but his authority is real, ancient, and absolute. The underworld itself, called Hades by the name of its ruler, was imagined as a vast and shadowed place beneath the earth. To reach it, the dead had to cross great boundaries, often rivers. Different poets and traditions emphasize different features, but several names recur throughout Greek thought. Styx, the river of hateful oath; Acheron, the river of woe; Cocytus, the river of lamentation; Phlegethon, the river of fire; and Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. These are not always arranged the same way in every source, but together they create the sense of a realm defined by passage, separation, memory, and loss. Souls do not simply step into death, they journey into it. One of the best-known figures of this realm is Charon, the ferryman, who carries the souls of the dead across the waters, often Acheron or Styx depending on the tradition. The image is simple and haunting. The newly dead arriving at the edge of a dark river, waiting for transport, cut off from the living world but not yet at rest. In later Greek custom, this imagination affected burial practice. A coin might be placed with the dead so that the soul could pay the ferryman. Myth shaped ritual, and ritual reinforced myth. At the gates of the underworld stood Cerberus, the many-headed hound, most often said to have 3 heads in later and familiar traditions, though some accounts made him even more monstrous. His purpose was not chiefly to keep the dead in terror, but to prevent their escape. The realm of Hades is a place one enters and does not lightly leave. Greek mythology is filled with journeys, wanderings, voyages, and returns, but death remains the hardest border of all. The living may dream of it, fear it, or descend into it under extraordinary circumstances, yet for ordinary mortals, its law is final. Within the underworld, the dead were not all treated identically. Greek myth gradually developed a more differentiated view of the afterlife than a simple shadowy mass. In early imagination, many of the dead seemed to exist as diminished shades, lacking the fullness of life, wandering in a muted and joyless condition. Homer's underworld in particular gives a bleak impression. The dead retain memory and identity, but only faintly, as if they are the worn outlines of the persons they once were. Achilles in the Odyssey famously declares that he would rather be a laborer on earth than king among the dead, and that statement reveals just how thin and sorrowful death could appear to Greek thought. Yet even within this shadowed kingdom there were distinctions. The greatest offenders against divine and moral order suffered special punishments. Tantalus stood in water he could not drink, beneath fruit he could not reach, eternally tormented by nearness without satisfaction. Sisyphus strained forever to roll his stone uphill, only to have it slip back again. Ixion was bound to a whirling wheel. These punishments belong to a later chapter in fuller detail, but their presence in the underworld already tells us something important. Death is not only the common end, it can also become the place where a life's arrogance, deceit, or impiety is given permanent shape. There were also more blessed regions. The Elysian Fields, or Elysium, appear in some traditions as a place where favored heroes or the righteous dead enjoy a gentler existence. In later thought, especially under mystery cult influence and philosophical development, ideas of moral reward and punishment in the afterlife became more elaborate. But even in earlier myth, the Greeks made room for the possibility that not all deaths are equally shadowed. Some mortals, especially those beloved by the gods or marked by heroic excellence, might dwell in more fortunate lands after death. This contrast between the ordinary dead, the punished dead, and the blessed dead gave the underworld a moral texture without making it a simple system. At the center of this kingdom sat Hades and his queen. But he did not always have a queen. That part of the story begins above ground, in the bright world of flowers, meadows, and spring. Persephone, daughter of Demeter and Zeus, was a maiden moving in the fields with companions, often gathering blossoms. The setting matters. Greek myth often places great ruptures at moments of beauty and innocence, not because beauty causes harm, but because the world is never safer than it seems. Persephone belongs at this stage to the upper world, to youth, to growth, to the season when the earth offers itself freely. She is associated with freshness, with the unshadowed life of a daughter still under her mother's care. Hades saw her and desired her. In many versions, Zeus gave consent to the match without consulting Demeter, and this too is profoundly revealing. Greek myth often reflects the structures and tensions of patriarchal marriage, where a daughter may pass from one household to another through the decision of men, while the mother's grief is left to erupt afterward. Yet in the divine version, the stakes are cosmic. Persephone is not merely a bride, she is fertility's child, the daughter of grain and growth. To take her below is to wound the very principle of life above ground. As Persephone bent to pick a flower, often the Narcissus in the Homeric hymn to Demeter, the earth opened. Hades rose in his chariot, dark and golden at once, because the underworld in Greek thought contains both terror and hidden wealth. He seized Persephone and carried her down beneath the earth while she cried out to her father Zeus and to her mother Demeter. Zeus did not intervene. Demeter did not hear clearly at first, though echoes of the cry reached certain divine witnesses, among them Hecate in some versions, and Helios, the all-seeing sun, who later reveals what happened. This moment is one of the defining scenes of Greek mythology. A girl gathering flowers becomes queen of the dead. Spring is interrupted by abduction. The earth itself becomes a mouth. The world above is shown to stand over depths it does not control. And Demeter, when she learns the truth, enters into one of the most powerful griefs in all myth. She begins to search. The goddess of grain, harvest, and cultivated fertility leaves Olympus and wanders the earth in mourning. In the Homeric hymn to Demeter, she moves among mortals disguised as an old woman, carrying torches, refusing the ease and splendor of divine life. For 9 days she wanders without food or drink, not washing her body, not adorning herself, not smiling. This is grief in its starkest form, grief that empties the self of all ordinary function. Greek myth here becomes intensely human. The sorrow is divine, but it is also the sorrow of every mother who has lost a child, every household that has felt absence settle into its rooms. At last, Demeter comes to Eleusis, where she is received by the daughters of King Celeus and eventually welcomed into the royal house. There she sits in silence, veiled and grieving, until a servant woman named Iambe, or Baubo in some later traditions, makes her smile through jesting. This brief moment matters because it reveals something delicate in Greek religious imagination. Even in the darkest grief, the human world can still offer gestures of comfort to the divine. Demeter then nurses the infant Demophon, son of the house, and in a remarkable episode attempts to make him immortal by anointing him and placing him in the fire at night to burn away his mortal elements. But when the child's mother sees this and cries out in alarm, the process is interrupted. Demeter reveals herself in divine splendor and commands that a temple be built for her at Eleusis. This episode is not incidental. It connects Demeter's grief to one of the most important cult centers in ancient Greece, Eleusis, where the Eleusinian mysteries would later promise initiates blessed knowledge connected with life, death, and the hope of a better fate beyond the grave. Myth here explains ritual and sacred geography. Demeter's sorrow becomes the foundation of a religious tradition that would endure for centuries. But Demeter does not merely grieve, she withholds. In her pain and anger, she causes the earth to become barren. No seed sprouts, no grain rises, the fields fail. Humanity faces famine, the animals that depend on vegetation weaken. Sacrifices to the gods diminish because mortals no longer have abundance to offer. This is one of the great insights of Greek mythology. The emotional life of the gods and the life of the natural world are intertwined. Demeter is not a distant symbol of agriculture. She is agriculture. Her grief is drought. Her refusal is winter. When the goddess of grain withdraws, civilization itself begins to falter. The other gods become concerned, not only out of sympathy, but because divine order depends on the continuity of worship. If humans perish, who will honor the gods? Zeus sends messengers to Demeter, inviting her back to Olympus, offering honors and gifts, but she refuses. She will not relent until Persephone is returned. At last, Zeus yields to necessity and sends Hermes to the underworld to negotiate with Hades. Hermes is the natural envoy for such a task. As the god of boundaries, roads, and transitions, he moves where others would hesitate. He can pass from Olympus to earth to the house of the dead, carrying messages between realms that usually remain apart. Thus, he descends to Hades and commands, or politely conveys according to the tone of the tradition, that Persephone must be allowed to return to her mother. Hades agrees, but not without securing a lasting bond. Before Persephone departs, he gives her pomegranate seeds to eat. In some versions, she consumes them willingly. in others unknowingly, in others under subtle pressure. The details differ, but the effect is the same. By tasting the food of the underworld, she binds herself to it. This idea appears in many cultures. To eat in a place is to participate in its order. Greek myth uses it with extraordinary emotional power. Persephone cannot simply return untouched. The underworld has entered her, and she has entered it. When Demeter is reunited with her daughter, the earth flowers again. Grain returns, growth resumes, life pours upward. But because Persephone has eaten the seeds, the solution cannot be absolute. A compromise is established. For part of the year, Persephone will remain with Demeter above ground, and for part of the year she will dwell below as queen beside Hades. In this cycle, the Greeks found their mythic explanation for the seasons, especially in a Mediterranean agricultural context where the fertile and barren periods were deeply felt. When Persephone is with Demeter, the earth becomes fruitful. When she descends again, Demeter mourns, and the world enters its season of loss. The beauty of this myth lies in how many realities it holds together at once. It explains seasonal change, yet it is not merely an agricultural allegory. It is also a story of marriage, separation, maternal grief, death, initiation, and the double nature of becoming. Persephone is not only a victim, forever frozen in the moment of abduction. She becomes queen. She grows into a role that is terrible and majestic. She belongs to two worlds, and that divided belonging gives her extraordinary depth. She is Kore, the maiden, and also Persephone, ruler below. She is Spring's daughter and Death's queen. Demeter too emerges as one of the most emotionally profound of all Greek deities. Her sorrow is not ornamental, it changes the world. Through her, the Greeks express the truth that loss is not private only. A mother's grief can alter the entire order of life. And yet the myth does not end in annihilation, it ends in rhythm. Separation and reunion become cyclical. The world learns to live with return that is never complete and loss that is never final. The underworld itself gains new meaning through Persephone's queenship. It remains the land of the dead, but no longer only a kingdom of shadow ruled by a distant male power. It now contains a figure who has known both meadow and darkness, both daughterhood and sovereignty. In some later myths, Persephone appears as formidable, even terrible, a queen not easily moved. Orpheus must appeal to her as well as to Hades. Adonis, in some traditions, becomes a subject of dispute involving her. She is not passive. She participates in judgment and in the mystery of the dead. The girl who was taken becomes part of the very structure that took her. Around this central myth, the Greeks imagined other features of the underworld. There were judges of the dead, often Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus, figures who evaluated souls. There were the asphodel meadows, where ordinary shades drifted in a pale afterlife. There was Lethe, where forgetting could blur mortal memory. There were punishments and rewards, distinctions that hinted that life's moral shape did not vanish entirely at death. But above all, there was distance. The dead are not simply elsewhere. They are in a realm beneath, hidden, difficult to access, and governed by powers who do not surrender what is theirs without extraordinary cause. This is why catabasis, the descent to the underworld, becomes such an important motif in Greek myth. To go down alive and return is to cross the greatest boundary. Heracles will do it. Orpheus will attempt it. Odysseus will approach the dead through ritual and vision. These later stories all stand in the shadow of Hades's kingdom as it has now been defined. The underworld is not a vague afterthought. It is a place with rulers, laws, geography, and emotional resonance. It is the hidden half of the cosmos. The myth of Persephone also marks the first great weaving together of mortal and seasonal time with divine drama. Earlier myths explained cosmic succession and the human condition broadly. Here, myth enters the yearly life of farmers, mothers, daughters, households, and communities waiting for the earth to yield. The divine is no longer only above, in thunder, or in distant halls of Olympus. It is in the seed that does not sprout, in the field gone pale, in the return of green after barren months. Religion becomes seasonal memory. And in Eleusis, this memory became sacred practice. Though the inner rites of the mysteries were kept secret, ancient testimony suggests that participants experienced something tied to Demeter, Persephone, grain, death, and hope. The myth thus reaches beyond storytelling into lived spiritual life. Initiates did not merely hear of Demeter's search. They entered ritually into a drama of loss and return, perhaps receiving comfort that death was not simply emptiness, that the earth's cycle concealed a more merciful truth. Greek mythology here touches something almost tender beneath its usual severity. Still, the tenderness remains bound to inevitability. Persephone must return below. Demeter must endure renewed separation. The dead do not become living bodies again by ordinary means. Mortals still pass to Hades, and most do not return. Winter still comes. The fields still fail before they flourish. Greek myth does not abolish darkness, it teaches people to see pattern within it. By the end of this, the world of Greek mythology has deepened considerably. Olympus reigns above, humanity lives under burden and giftedness. And now, beneath the earth, there lies a realm of shadows, judgment, memory, and queenship. Hades rules with stern inevitability. Persephone moves between worlds. Demeter mourns and restores. The seasons turn because love was wounded and never fully healed. From here, the stories of the gods themselves will continue to unfold in greater richness. Their personalities, desires, rivalries, and distinct powers will begin to fill the mythic landscape more fully, and the mortal world will increasingly feel the weight and wonder of their presence. With the heavens ordered, the mortal race awakened, and the underworld given its queen, Greek mythology now entered the phase in which the gods themselves became fully vivid. Until this point, the story has moved through vast structures: creation, succession, rebellion, the shaping of human life, the setting of cosmic boundaries. But mythology is not sustained by structure alone. It lives through presence. The gods must become more than names attached to functions. They must reveal their temperaments, their habits, their loves, their dangers, and the particular way each one enters the world. This is where the Olympian family, already enthroned, begins to feel intensely alive. The Greeks did not imagine the gods as distant abstractions floating beyond all likeness to humanity. They imagined them as immortal powers with human form, speech, emotion, and intention, though magnified beyond mortal limits. The gods hunger less than humans, suffer differently, and do not age or die, yet they desire, resent, laugh, compete, seduce, punish, protect, and remember. That is part of what makes Greek mythology so enduring. The divine world is not a silent perfection. It is brilliant, unstable, intimate, and often unsettlingly familiar. The gods are greater than human beings, but not alien to them. Their passions move through the same emotional territory, only with consequences vast enough to shape cities, seasons, bloodlines, and history. Among all the Olympians, Athena stands near the center of this new divine clarity. Born from the head of Zeus, fully armed and already complete, she enters the mythic world not as a child growing into herself, but as a presence suddenly revealed. Everything about her birth suggests form, discipline, and intelligence brought forth in a single act. She is the goddess of wisdom, but not wisdom as dreamy reflection alone. Hers is practical intelligence, statecraft, planning, clear judgment, and skill joined to purpose. She presides over strategy and war, over weaving and craft, over the mind that knows how to make, arrange, and prevail without surrendering to chaos. This is why Athena differs so sharply from Ares. Both belong to war, yet they embody opposite dimensions of it. Athena governs the war of planning, formation, restraint, and reason. She is the shield raised at the right moment, the careful reading of terrain, the city defended through intelligence rather than rage. Ares, by contrast, is battle's raw appetite, the heat of combat, the rush of blood, the clash that delights in itself. Greek poets often regard Athena with deeper respect because the Greeks themselves, especially in civic imagination, valued order over frenzy. A battle won through mind is more admirable than a battle entered only for violence's sake. Athena's special relationship with Athens would become one of the defining connections between deity and city in the Greek world. In the famous myth of contest for the city, Poseidon and Athena both sought to become its patron. Poseidon struck the earth with his trident and produced either a salt spring or a horse, depending on the version, a gift of force, power, and aristocratic splendor. Athena offered the olive tree, source of oil, wood, nourishment, and long-term prosperity. The people chose Athena, and the city took her name. This myth reveals much about Greek values. The winning gift is not the most dramatic, but the most sustaining. Civilization chooses cultivation over spectacle, endurance over sheer force. Athena becomes therefore not only a goddess of battle, but a guardian of urban life, crafts, law, and collective intelligence. Apollo, too, comes into fuller presence now, and with him, Greek religion acquires one of its most luminous and complex figures. Son of Zeus and Leto, twin brother of Artemis, Apollo is difficult to reduce to any single function because he gathers into himself many powers that might otherwise seem unrelated. He is a god of music and plague, healing and sudden death, prophecy and archery, youthful beauty and relentless exactness. He belongs to light, though in early myth he is not simply the sun in the way later popular imagination often suggests. Rather, he carries something radiant and clarifying. He reveals, pierces, purifies, and strikes. He is both blessing and danger at a distance. The circumstances of his birth already show the tension around him. Leto, pursued by Hera's jealousy because she had conceived by Zeus, wandered in search of a place to give birth. No land wanted to receive her for fear of Hera's anger, until at last the floating island of Delos accepted her. There she gave birth first, in many versions, to Artemis, who then helped her mother deliver Apollo. The idea of a divine birth taking place on a wandering island that then becomes anchored in sacred significance is deeply fitting. Delos was transformed by receiving the god. What had floated uncertainly became fixed through sacred event. Apollo's arrival has that effect again and again in myth. He brings centrality. One of the most important episodes of Apollo's early myth is his encounter with Phaethon. At Delphi, an ancient sacred place associated with earth powers and prophetic depth, Apollo slew the serpent or dragon Phaethon and claimed the site as his own. This was not merely a feat of heroism. It marked the transfer, or at least the reorganization, of sacred authority. Delphi would become the most famous oracle in the Greek world, where the Pythia, inspired by Apollo, delivered responses sought by cities, kings, colonists, and ordinary petitioners alike. That Apollo's title there remained linked to Python in the name Pythia suggests not total erasure of the older power, but its transformation. Greek mythology repeatedly shows younger divine orders establishing themselves on older sacred ground, not without violence, but rarely without leaving traces of what came before. Apollo's prophecy differs from mere prediction. It reveals the divine pattern within uncertainty. The Greeks did not go to Delphi expecting easy answers. Apollo often speaks in ways that are true but difficult, requiring interpretation and humility. This is characteristic of him. He governs clarity, but clarity that can blind those who approach it carelessly. His arrows strike from afar, so do his truths. He heals, yet he can also send plague, as in the opening of the Iliad, where insult to his priest brings deadly arrows raining through the Greek camp. He is beauty disciplined into power. Artemis, his twin, moves through very different spaces. If Apollo belongs to measured song, prophecy, and the sacred center, Artemis belongs to the margins, the wild, the mountain slope, the moonlit clearing, the places where civilized order gives way to untamed life. She is goddess of the hunt, of wild animals, of the young before marriage, and especially of maidens. She protects and threatens in equal measure. Her virginity is not mere abstinence, but autonomy, freedom from the structures of marriage and household that define so much of female life in Greek society. She moves with a retinue of nymphs, bow in hand, swift and distant. Yet Artemis is not gentle in the modern sentimental sense. She can punish with terrifying speed any violation of her dignity or sacred boundaries. Actaeon, who accidentally or in some traditions arrogantly saw her bathing, was transformed into a stag and torn apart by his own hounds. Niobe, boasting that she was greater than Leto because she had more children, provoked the vengeance of both Apollo and Artemis, who slew her sons and daughters. In these myths, Artemis reveals the dangerous sanctity of purity, pride, and untouched wildness. She protects the vulnerable, especially the young, and yet she is herself a force that mortals must never presume upon. Ares, by contrast, almost invites presumption because he represents what mortals know too well in themselves. He is war-stripped of nobility, battle as appetite, conflict as intoxication. For that reason, he is often not beloved by Greek poets, though he is certainly powerful. His presence in myth is frequently associated with destruction, humiliation, or entanglement in passions that make him appear less admirable than Athena. Even his celebrated love affair with Aphrodite exposes him not as victorious, but as vulnerable to ridicule. When Hephaestus caught the two lovers in a finely wrought net and exposed them before the gods, the story became one of the most pointed examples of divine embarrassment. Ares is fierce in battle, but not subtle. Greek mythology consistently places him beneath more strategic or self-controlled powers. And yet, he cannot be excluded. War contains frenzy. Human history contains slaughter, shouting, blood, and blind collision. Ares exists because that dimension of reality exists. The Greeks, unlike more polished moral systems, did not remove the ugly forces from the divine realm. They named them and gave them place, even if not highest honor. Aphrodite, perhaps more than any other Olympian, proves that beauty in Greek myth is never merely decorative. Whether born from sea foam after the mutilation of Ouranos or counted among the daughters of Zeus in some traditions, she enters the divine order as the power of attraction itself. She governs desire, erotic union, persuasion through beauty, adornment, and the often irresistible pull between beings. But Aphrodite is not only tender love. She can be disruptive, manipulative, vain, and devastating. In the Trojan cycle, which will come later, her role in awarding Helen to Paris unleashes an entire war. Desire, in Greek thought, creates generations and destroys cities. Aphrodite therefore belongs among the deepest powers because no structure of law or wisdom entirely masters the heart's vulnerability to beauty. Her marriage to Hephaestus is especially revealing. The divine smith, lame and industrious, is paired with the radiant goddess of erotic charm. The match is unstable from the start. Aphrodite's affair with Ares, the beautiful violence of war paired with the beautiful violence of desire, seems almost inevitable in mythic logic, yet the husband she betrays is the one who can craft the net that captures them. Greek myth thus stages an intricate interplay among beauty, force, and craft. Desire may mock labor, but labor can still expose desire's shame. Nothing in Olympus is ever simple. Hephaestus himself becomes more compelling the longer one looks at him. Cast down from Olympus in some traditions, mocked or rejected for his deformity, he nevertheless creates much of the splendor the gods enjoy. Palaces, weapons, armor, jewelry, thrones, even marvelous artificial beings in some stories, all emerge from his forge. His fire is unlike Prometheus's stolen flame in one important sense. It is not merely fire as human utility, but fire as craft raised to divine perfection. In Hephaestus, the Greeks recognized that beauty and power are often made by those who do not outwardly embody them. He is injured yet productive, humiliated yet indispensable. His forge, hidden in volcanic depths or divine workshops, is where form is imposed upon resistant matter. In a mythology full of kings, seducers, and warriors, Hephaestus gives sacred dignity to the maker. Hermes, son of Zeus and Maia, enters mythology with a lighter step but no less significance. If Apollo is the clear line, Hermes is the quick curve. If Athena is disciplined intelligence, Hermes is improvisational cleverness. He is god of travel, roads, commerce, heralds, thieves, boundaries, and transitions. He moves between worlds and categories with ease. Even as an infant, he displayed astonishing cunning, stealing Apollo's cattle, disguising his tracks, and inventing the lyre from a tortoise shell before the day was done. This early myth is delightful, but its importance runs deep. Hermes is born already crossing limits, transforming stolen goods into art, turning conflict into exchange. When Apollo confronted him over the cattle theft, Hermes did not merely defend himself, he charmed, negotiated, and eventually reconciled. He gave Apollo the lyre, and Apollo in turn granted him honors. From this exchange emerges a profound truth about Greek myth. Cunning need not always end in punishment. Under the right conditions, it can become part of order. Hermes is the patron of thieves, yes, but also of trade. Theft and exchange are dangerously close at the boundary, so are lies and diplomacy. Hermes governs that unstable but necessary space where contact happens. He escorts souls to the underworld, carries messages between gods, protects travelers, and sanctifies the stranger's path. Without Hermes, the world's divisions would harden into silence. Dionysus stands apart even among these vivid powers. His full acceptance into Olympus comes through unusual and often painful routes, but that only intensifies his significance. Son of Zeus and Semele, a mortal woman, Dionysus is born through catastrophe. Hera, jealous again, tricked Semele into asking Zeus to reveal himself in his full divine form. Bound by oath, Zeus did so, and Semele was destroyed by the terrible brightness. Zeus rescued the unborn child and sewed him into his thigh until the time of birth was complete. Thus, Dionysus is twice born, marked from the beginning by dislocation, liminality, and paradox. He is the god of wine, ecstasy, theater, altered states, fertility, and the loosening of ordinary identity. But to call him only the wine god is far too little. Dionysus breaks boundaries between civilization and wildness, male and female performance, joy and terror, self-control and surrender. His worship could bring delight, communal release, and sacred transformation, but also madness, violence, and loss of self. In Euripides and in broader Greek imagination, he reveals how fragile the polished surface of rational civic life really is. Beneath law and custom lies a capacity for frenzy that the Greeks did not deny. Dionysus does not merely threaten order from outside, he exposes what order cannot suppress within human nature. The gods around him often resist his arrival, and mortals frequently deny him at their peril. Pentheus, who will later reject Dionysus in Thebes, becomes one of the most famous examples of human refusal to honor divine ecstasy. But even before such stories unfold, Dionysus stands as a reminder that Olympus is not composed only of orderly powers. The divine world also contains intoxication, release, performance, and sacred excess. Greek mythology would be much simpler without him and much less true to human experience. Hera, though already known as Queen of the Gods, also becomes more fully visible in this middle stage of mythology. Too often she is remembered only for jealousy, but that is an incomplete reading. Hera is the protector of marriage, lawful union, queenship, and the dignity of the wife within a world where Zeus repeatedly undermines those very things. Her anger is fierce because her sphere is repeatedly violated. She persecutes many of Zeus's lovers and children, sometimes with shocking cruelty, and modern readers often recoil from her severity. But the myths preserve a genuine structural tension. Hera defends legitimacy in a cosmos ruled by a husband who constantly creates illegitimate complications. Her rage is the divine form of an institution trying to survive humiliation. That does not excuse her cruelty, but it explains its force. Demeter and Hestia, quieter than many Olympians in dramatic narrative, remain foundational. Demeter's central myth with Persephone has already shown her emotional power, but her ongoing role in the divine world is equally important. She is the continuance of life through cultivation, the steady miracle of food from earth. Greek myth often turns to spectacular acts, yet behind all spectacle lies the field that must grow grain. Demeter represents the sacred ordinary, the basis of settled civilization. Hestia, still more inward, holds the center. She rarely quarrels because she signifies what must not be displaced: the hearth, the fire around which household and city cohere. Some traditions say she yielded her place among the 12 Olympians so that Dionysus might be counted, choosing peace over rivalry. Whether historical cult arithmetic or meaningful mythic gesture, the idea suits her. She is presence without spectacle. Poseidon too now emerges more distinctly beyond his earlier allotment of the sea. He is not only Lord of Waters, but of sudden upheaval. His title, Earthshaker, reveals his connection to earthquakes, and his association with horses links him to speed, force, aristocratic grandeur, and energies hard to domesticate. In many myths, Poseidon contends with other gods for patronage of cities and places. He loses Athens to Athena, But such contests show that the Greek landscape itself was mythologized through divine rivalry. Every coast, spring, promontory, island, and harbor could become the site of a story in which a god had once claimed, struck, blessed, or contested the land. Poseidon's temperament is proud, quick to offense, and often relentless. Sailors prayed to him because the sea gave no guarantees. As the Olympians became more fully themselves, Greek myth also developed a kind of divine society. The gods feast together, argue in assembly, intervene in one another's affairs, form alliances, hold grudges, laugh at one another, and take an almost theatrical interest in mortal life. This is not a perfectly moral heaven. It is a court. Rank matters, kinship matters, favor matters. Zeus can compel, but not always with smooth obedience. Hera resists him. Athena advises him. Apollo advances his own priorities. Poseidon may support one side in a human conflict while Zeus weighs another outcome. The gods are united enough to remain gods, but divided enough to make myth move. This divine society mirrors and magnifies Greek aristocratic life. Banquets, honor, insult, competition, gift exchange, public speech, and family alliance all shape Olympus just as they shape heroic and civic culture below. That is why myths of the gods feel so politically alive. They are cosmic, but they are also social. The Greeks did not imagine power in isolation. They imagined it enacted through relationships, rituals, and quarrels among persons whose roles were both fixed and volatile. The mortal world, watching and suffering under all this, begins to experience the gods not as distant principles, but as active presences. A city may belong especially to one deity. A family may claim descent from another. A young woman may fear Artemis, a sailor Poseidon, a musician Apollo, a bride Hera, a craftsman Athena or Hephaestus, a merchant Hermes, a farmer Demeter, a lover Aphrodite. Religion in the Greek world was not built on one central emotional tone. It was plural, because life itself was plural. Different powers governed different needs, dangers, and hopes. And the gods were not merely worshipped for comfort. They were also feared, negotiated with, thanked, blamed, and interpreted. Omens, sacrifices, festivals, hymns, and local cults all helped mediate the relationship between divine and mortal. Myth did not stand apart from that world. It explained why these rituals mattered and what sort of beings received them. To sacrifice to Apollo was to approach a god who could heal or strike. To honor Dionysus was to acknowledge the sacred necessity of release. To invoke Athena was to seek not only protection, but judgment informed by wisdom. Myth made piety vivid. By now, the Greek divine world has become crowded with personality, and that crowding is part of its power. No single god governs every human experience. Instead, life unfolds under a shifting canopy of presences, each beautiful or terrifying in a specific way. Love belongs to Aphrodite, but not marriage's law. That belongs to Hera. War belongs to both Ares and Athena, but in radically different forms. Boundaries belong to Hermes, but hearth stability to Hestia. Wild nature belongs to Artemis, cultivated grain to Demeter. Craft belongs to Hephaestus and Athena. Music belongs to Apollo, but ecstatic performance to Dionysus. This differentiation is one of the great accomplishments of Greek mythology. It mirrors the complexity of life itself by refusing to reduce reality to one divine mood. And yet, for all their distinctions, the Olympians are not isolated compartments. They overlap constantly. Apollo and Artemis act together. Aphrodite and Ares unite. Hephaestus ensnares them. Athena and Poseidon contend over cities. Hera opposes the offspring of Zeus's unions. Hermes mediates between realms touched by almost every other deity. Dionysus disrupts the order all the others inhabit. Zeus stands above them, yet continually depends on the cooperation, rivalry, and response of the very powers over whom he rules. Olympus is a family, and therefore it is never still. The stage is now fully prepared for the mortal stories in which these gods will intervene more directly. Men and women will boast, pray, offend, seduce, wander, build, and betray under the eyes of the Olympians. Some will be helped, some will be destroyed, some will become almost as memorable as the gods themselves. But before the age of heroes reaches its full height, Greek mythology will linger over another essential truth. Mortals do not suffer only because gods are powerful. They also suffer because human pride, blindness, and desire draw divine response. The old balance between heaven and earth is about to become more intimate, more dangerous, and more tragic. As the gods grew clearer in form and temperament, the mortal world beneath them grew more dangerous. By now, the shape of Greek mythology had become unmistakable. The heavens were ruled, the sea had its master, the underworld its king and queen, and human beings had received both the gifts and burdens that define their condition. But if the earlier stories explained how the world came to be ordered, the next movement of myth asked a harsher question. How are mortals to live inside that order without destroying themselves? Again and again, the Greek answer returns to one central danger, a danger more subtle than brute strength and more common than open wickedness. It is the danger of excess. It is the moment when human beings forget the scale of their own lives, mistake temporary success for godlike stature, or refuse the limits built into mortal existence. The Greeks called that dangerous overreaching hubris, and some of their most unforgettable stories are not tales of heroes triumphing, but of mortals brought low because they crossed the line that separates the human from the divine. This does not mean Greek myth teaches simple humility in a gentle or comforting way. The Greeks admired greatness. They loved brilliance, daring, beauty, athletic excellence, rhetorical skill, martial courage, and remarkable intelligence. Their mythology does not celebrate smallness for its own sake. What it distrusts is greatness that forgets its boundaries. A man may be mighty, but he is still a man. A woman may be astonishingly gifted, but she remains mortal. A king may command armies, build cities, and judge disputes, but he cannot undo death, outwit every god, or claim honors that belong above him. Tragedy begins when that distinction blurs. One of the clearest examples is the story of Niobe. She was a queen, daughter of Tantalus, and in many traditions the wife of Amphion of Thebes. Niobe had many children, often said to be 7 sons and 7 daughters, though numbers vary in ancient sources. Her abundance became her pride. Looking upon her large and beautiful family, she boasted that she was greater than Leto, who had borne only 2 children, Apollo and Artemis. This is a revealing form of arrogance. Niobe does not merely rejoice in what she has. She sets herself above a goddess by measuring visible quantity against divine status. She sees more children and assumes that more means better. It is a profoundly mortal error, the mistake of judging power by what can be counted in the present moment. Leto herself is a quieter deity than many Olympians, often overshadowed by the brilliance of her children, but insult to her, insult to them. Apollo and Artemis answered not with argument, but with arrows. Apollo slew Niobe's sons and Artemis her daughters, until the queen, who had boasted of abundance, stood amid silence. In some versions, one daughter survives, but the essential image remains: a mother's pride transformed into a field of mourning. Niobe's tears continued without end, and she was turned to stone on Mount Sipylus, where even in rock she went on weeping. The myth does not simply punish arrogance with death, it transforms arrogance into permanent grief. Niobe becomes a monument to the way pride hardens and still cannot stop sorrow from flowing through it. The horror of her story lies in how quickly glory becomes emptiness. She had what most mortals long for: children, position, visible prosperity. Yet in Greek myth, these things are never secure possessions. They are gifts held under the gaze of powers greater than human self-satisfaction. To boast in them as if they are self-made, untouchable, or superior to the gods is to invite catastrophe. And the catastrophe often arrives through the very thing one neglected to honor. Niobe offended Leto, and it was Leto's children who struck. Another figure who reveals the peril of overreaching is Arachne. Unlike Niobe, whose pride rested on family and status, Arachne's confidence rested on skill. She was a mortal woman famed for her weaving, and her work was so exquisite that people marveled at it as something nearly divine. But admiration, once received often enough, can become intoxication. Arachne did not merely take satisfaction in her talent, she declared herself equal or superior to Athena, goddess of weaving, craft, and disciplined intelligence. Here again the offense is precise. Athena governs the very art in which Arachne excels. To rival another mortal in weaving would be bold but human. To challenge the goddess of the loom herself is something different. Athena came to her, in some versions disguised as an old woman, and warned her to show respect. Arachne refused. The contest began. Both produced astonishing tapestries. Athena's work showed the gods in majesty and the punishments that followed mortal arrogance. Arachne's tapestry, by contrast, depicted the gods' deceptions and erotic betrayals, especially the many transformations by which Zeus seduced or violated mortal women. This detail gives the myth unusual complexity. Arachne is arrogant, yes, but she is also perceptive. Her art exposes divine misconduct with unsettling skill. Some traditions even imply that her weaving was flawless, perhaps equal to or better than Athena's in technical execution. If so, the myth becomes even more charged because it suggests that truth and hubris can coexist in the same act. Athena, enraged either by the challenge itself or by the irreverent content of the tapestry, destroyed Arachne's work and struck her. Arachne hanged herself in despair, and Athena transformed her into a spider, condemning her and her descendants to weave forever. The punishment is not pure annihilation. It is continuity in diminished form. Arachne keeps the art she loved but loses human standing, becoming a creature defined by endless making without honor. This is one of the sharpest Greek reflections on talent. Exceptional ability does not grant equality with the divine source of that ability. To possess genius is not to own it absolutely. The Greeks admired mastery, but they also feared the pride mastery invites. Yet another warning appears in the story of Perseus. He was a satyr in many traditions, a being of wild nature, music, and untamed appetite, and he found or received the flute that Athena had once discarded. Athena had invented the instrument but threw it away after seeing how playing it distorted her face. Perseus, however, mastered it and became so proud of his music that he challenged Apollo himself to a contest. Once more, the structure is familiar. A mortal, or at least a lesser being not equal to the great Olympian, confuses excellence within a craft for parity with the god who governs the highest form of that craft. Apollo, with his lyre and his association with measured harmony, accepted. The Muses often served as judges. Marsyas played brilliantly, but Apollo either won outright or altered the terms by singing while playing, something Marsyas could not match with the flute. The punishment was appalling. Apollo flayed Marsyas alive. To modern readers, the violence may seem disproportionate, but Greek mythology often uses extreme punishments to inscribe boundaries permanently. Marsyas' skin was hung up, and in some traditions his blood or tears became a river. Music, which can lift the soul toward the divine, here becomes the occasion of unspeakable suffering when detached from reverence and measure. The story is especially revealing because Apollo is a god of beauty and art, not merely war or law. Even beauty has boundaries. To challenge divine excellence in the very domain that reveals it most clearly is not noble boldness in Greek myth. It is blindness. Not all examples of mortal overreaching involve explicit contests. Some arise from attempts to evade the most fundamental limits of human life. Sisyphus is one of the great figures here. He was a king of Corinth, renowned for cunning, and in several myths he used his intelligence not simply to survive, but to deceive gods, expose divine secrets, or cheat death itself. One famous tradition says that when Zeus abducted Aegina, Sisyphus revealed the god's deed to her father in exchange for a spring on the Acrocorinth. Another says he managed to chain up Thanatos, the personification of death, so that no one on earth could die. The result was chaos. Wounds no longer ended in death, and the natural order stalled. Ares himself, frustrated that battle no longer fulfilled its grim logic, had to intervene and free death. Even after this, Sisyphus still sought to outwit the inevitable. Before dying, he told his wife not to perform the proper burial rites. Once in the underworld, he complained to Persephone that he had been sent below unhonored and persuaded her to let him return briefly to the upper world to correct the omission. Once back among the living, he refused to return. For a time, he succeeded. That is what makes Sisyphus so compelling. He is not a fool stumbling into punishment. He is genuinely clever. He sees possibilities where others submit. He can exploit ritual, language, and timing, but in Greek myth, cleverness that tries to cancel mortality rather than live intelligently within it becomes self-condemning. When Sisyphus was finally recaptured, his punishment matched his offense with merciless precision. In the underworld, he was made to roll a massive stone uphill, only for it to slip from his grasp each time it neared the summit, forcing him to begin again forever. The image is among the most famous in all mythology because it captures the agony of effort without fulfillment, intelligence without escape, will without final success. Sisyphus tried to master death through cunning. Instead, he received endless labor stripped of completion. His punishment is not random toil, it is the eternal form of frustrated control. He is still striving, still acting, still almost succeeding, and therefore never released from the structure of his own defiance. His father, in some traditions, was Aeolus. In others, his lineage varies, but what matters most is the family line of clever arrogance in which he stands. And Sisyphus does not remain isolated in Greek thought. He becomes an image of a broader human frustration, the sense that labor fills life and slips back again, that ambitions rise and fall, that each mortal project moves toward some summit it cannot keep. Greek myth makes that universal feeling visible by giving it one condemned king and one rolling stone. Tantalus offers another variation. He was favored by the gods, invited in some traditions to dine with them, a privilege that should have taught reverence. Instead, his closeness to divinity became the source of his ruin. Different ancient sources preserve different offenses. In one, he stole ambrosia and nectar to share divine food with mortals. In another, and more darkly remembered version, he slaughtered his own son Pelops, cooked him, and served him to the gods to test whether they truly knew all things. The gods recognized the horror, though Demeter, distracted by grief for Persephone in some accounts, absent-mindedly consumed part of the shoulder before realizing what had happened. Pelops was restored to life, his missing shoulder replaced with ivory, and Tantalus was condemned. His punishment was one of eternal nearness to satisfaction without attainment. He stood in water that receded when he bent to drink, beneath branches heavy with fruit that lifted away when he reached. The torture is exquisitely fitted to his crime. He abused the intimacy of divine table fellowship and perverted the act of sharing food into sacrilege and atrocity. Now he exists forever in the perverse form of appetite denied. Hunger and thirst define him. He can see what he wants, almost touch it, but never receive it. This is not only punishment for one man, it is a mythic meditation on desire itself, on the anguish of what remains visible and unreachable. Tantalus also gave Greek myth one of its darkest reflections on family corruption. To kill one's child and offer the child as food overturns the very structure of kinship, hospitality, and sacrifice. It is anti-order in one of its most shocking forms. That Pelops is restored matters, because Greek myth often refuses to let atrocity have the final word, but restoration does not erase the stain. The house descended from Pelops becomes one of the most cursed in all Greek legend, eventually giving rise to Atreus, Thyestes, Agamemnon, Clytemnestra, Orestes, and Electra. A single offense reverberates across generations. Greek mythology repeatedly insists that crime within a family rarely remains confined to one moment. Then there is Ixion, another man who crossed divine human boundaries in a more intimate and perverse way. Purified by Zeus after committing murder, Ixion should have been grateful. Instead, he conceived desire for Hera herself. This is an especially grave form of hubris, because Hera is not merely a beautiful goddess, but the queen of heaven and Zeus's wife. To lust after her within Zeus's own hospitality is an outrage against kinship, gratitude, and cosmic rank all at once. Zeus, aware of Ixion's intent, fashioned a cloud in Hera's likeness called Nephele, and from union with this false Hera came the centaurs in one line of tradition. Ixion thus mates not with the queen of the gods, but with illusion shaped by his own impiety. His punishment was to be bound to a fiery wheel, turning eternally through the air or the underworld. Again, the Greeks give the crime its symbolic form. Ixion desired what revolved beyond his rightful reach, and now he revolves forever, unable to come to rest. He betrayed hospitality, so he is denied stable dwelling. He burned with unlawful desire, and his wheel burns. These myths are full of physical images because Greek thought wanted punishment to be seen, not merely abstractly understood. A rolling stone, receding fruit, an endless wheel. Each becomes a lasting emblem. Another famous case is that of Phaethon, the son of Helios in many traditions, though some versions complicate his parentage. Phaethon longed for confirmation that he was truly the child of the sun god. When Helios acknowledged him and swore by the Styx to grant him any request, Phaethon asked to drive the sun chariot across the sky for one day. Helios begged him to choose otherwise. The request was too great even for the son of the sun. The horses were fierce, the path perilous, and only a god fully suited to the task could guide the blazing car from dawn to dusk. But oaths among the gods are binding, especially those sworn by the Styx. Helios had to yield. Phaethon mounted the chariot and at once lost control. The horses swerved too high and then too low. The earth began to burn. Rivers shrank, lands blackened. Some later imaginations used this myth to explain desert regions or the dark skin of certain peoples, reflecting the ancient tendency to mythologize geography through divine events. Whatever local details were attached, the essential truth is plain. Cosmic functions are not available to mortal ambition merely because lineage grants longing. To be the child of a god is not to be capable of godlike office. Seeing the world threatened by fire, Zeus struck Phaethon down with a thunderbolt. He fell from the sky into the river Eridanus, and his sisters, the Heliades, mourned him until they were transformed into poplars, their tears becoming amber. Phaethon's story is especially tragic because his desire begins in insecurity. He wants recognition, he wants proof of identity, but the path he chooses to confirm that identity is impossible. Instead of accepting relation to the divine with reverence, he demands direct possession of divine function. Greek mythology is deeply alert to this temptation. Mortals do not merely want blessing from the gods, they often want to feel what it would be like to be one. Phaethon is destroyed by that wish. The tale of Tantalus and Icarus belongs to this same moral world, though it adds more nuance because Tantalus is not only an arrogant inventor, but also a genuinely brilliant and tragic craftsman. Tantalus was famed for his skill, a maker of marvelous things, and his story intertwines with the Cretan cycle of King Minos and the Minotaur. After helping construct the labyrinth, and in some traditions aiding Ariadne and Theseus, Tantalus found himself trapped on Crete. He could not escape by land or sea because Minos controlled them both, so he turned to art. He fashioned wings of feathers and wax for himself and his son Icarus, and before they flew, he warned the boy to keep a middle course, neither too low, where the sea spray might weigh the feathers down, nor too high, where the sun's heat would melt the wax. The warning is one of the clearest statements of the Greek ideal of measure. Neither extreme is safe. Balance is wisdom. Yet once Icarus rose into the sky, exhilaration overcame restraint. He flew too near the sun. The wax softened, the wings came apart, and he fell into the sea and drowned. The pathos of this myth lies in the mixture of wonder and doom. Human craft almost achieves flight, almost escapes confinement, almost transforms necessity into freedom. Tantalus is no fraud, his invention works, but the success of the art makes excess tempting. Icarus does not fall because wings are impossible. He falls because he abandons the discipline required to use them. Greek myth here shows one of its most enduring truths. Human beings often fail not at the beginning of achievement, but in the intoxication after it begins to work. The first rising into air is what destroys the boy. That is why the story remains so resonant. It is not merely about disobedience, it is about the seduction of transcendence, the human urge to keep climbing once ordinary limits seem, even briefly, suspended. There are other myths too, each sharpening some aspect of the same lesson. Actaeon, as mentioned before, sees Artemis naked and is transformed into prey, destroyed by his own hounds. Whether his offense is accidental sight or forbidden desire varies by telling, but the punishment expresses a fundamental principle. Some divine realities are not available for mortal consumption. Salmoneus, a king who imitated Zeus by dragging bronze cauldrons and hurling torches to mimic thunder and lightning, was struck down for pretending to divine majesty. Cassiopeia boasted that she or her daughter surpassed the Nereids in beauty, and the offense rippled outward into sea monster and rescue myth through Andromeda. In each case, the same pattern emerges. Comparison with the gods, or with those close to them, is perilous. Speech itself can become an instrument of doom when it forgets proportion. Yet it would be too simple to say these stories only preach submission. Greek mythology is more tragic than that. Often the qualities that lead mortals toward ruin are the very qualities that make them memorable. Niobe's fierce pride in her children, Arachne's extraordinary artistry, Marsyas's daring musicianship, Sisyphus's intelligence, Phaethon's longing to prove his birth, Icarus's hunger for ascent, these are not empty or contemptible impulses. They are exaggerated forms of very human aspirations: to rejoice, to create, to excel, to know, to rise, to secure one's life, to become more than one's starting place. Greek myth does not mock these longings from a distance. It allows them their beauty. Then it shows what happens when they forget mortality. This is why the stories feel so severe and so recognizable at once. The Greeks understood that the line between excellence and disaster is often thin. Greatness courts ruin because greatness is tempted to believe itself self-sufficient. Even heroes, when they come more fully into the narrative, will not escape this law. The gods may favor them, parent them, arm them, even love them, but they remain vulnerable to excess. Mortality is not only the fact that one dies, it is the fact that one must act under limits one does not control. By the time these myths of punishment and hubris settle into the imaginative world of Greece, the relationship between gods and mortals has become morally charged in a new way. The gods are not merely stronger beings handing down arbitrary commands. They stand as the measure against which human scale is known. To forget them is often to forget reality itself. This does not make every divine punishment fair by modern standards, but fairness in Greek myth is not always the point. What matters more is fitness. Punishments fit crimes in image and structure. The liar is trapped in deceit, the overreacher in endless striving, the boastful in tears, the counterfeit god in divine fire, the violator of sacred art in transformed and diminished making. The world is now ready for the rise of heroes in a fuller sense because the moral atmosphere has been prepared. Mortals know what it means to offend, to boast, to overstep, to desire too much or too high. Against this background, heroic greatness will emerge not as simple strength, but as a dangerous attempt to achieve glory without collapsing into ruin. Some will succeed for a time, some will fail magnificently. All of them will move under the same sky where Zeus watches, Athena counsels, Apollo judges, Aphrodite entangles, Hera resents, Poseidon shakes, and the underworld waits. After the old stories of creation, rebellion, punishment, and divine order, Greek mythology turns at last toward the figures who stand between the helplessness of ordinary mortals and the overwhelming power of the gods. These are the heroes, and they are not heroes in the modern sense of simple moral goodness. They are larger than life, often beautiful, often violent, frequently flawed, sometimes noble, sometimes destructive, always marked by a nearness to the divine that sets them apart from common humanity without ever freeing them from mortality. They are the great strivers of the mythic age, men who confront monsters, kings, curses, impossible tasks, and the hidden violence of their own destinies. Through them, the Greeks explored what human greatness could look like when stretched almost beyond human measure. Most heroes in Greek myth are born from some mingling of mortal and divine blood. A god desires a mortal woman, or a prophecy shadows of birth, or a royal house becomes the stage on which fate enters history. This divine ancestry does not make heroes serene. On the contrary, it usually makes their lives more dangerous. To be born near the gods is to be born under greater expectation, greater jealousy, and often greater suffering. Heroic life in Greek mythology is not comfortable elevation above ordinary men. It is exposure. The hero must do what others cannot, but he is often punished more harshly than others would be if he fails. One of the earliest and most elegant of the great heroes is Perseus. His story begins, as so many Greek stories do, with a king trying to outrun prophecy. Achilles, king of Argos, was told that he would one day be killed by the son of his daughter, Danae. Terrified, he did not trust distance, diplomacy, or humility. Instead, he shut Danae away, often in a bronze chamber or underground room, hoping to prevent her from ever bearing a child. Greek mythology returns again and again to this pattern. The more violently one attempts to lock fate out of the world, the more surely one prepares a path for it. Danae's prison becomes the place where divine power enters. Zeus came to her not in ordinary form, but as a shower of gold, descending into the chamber in one of the most memorable and strange images in all myth. The golden rain suggests many things at once: divine radiance, erotic penetration without human approach, wealth, wonder, and the simple fact that no prison made by man can bar the king of the gods. Danae conceived and bore Perseus. When Achilles discovered the child, he did not dare kill mother and infant directly, perhaps out of fear of the gods or of blood guilt. Instead, he placed them in a chest and cast them into the sea, an act both cowardly and common in mythic logic, where those who fear a prophecy often hand their victims over to chance and call it innocence. But the sea did not become their grave. The chest drifted safely to the island of Seriphos, where Danae and Perseus were found by Dictys, a fisherman of kind disposition. Here, one of the quiet truths of Greek mythology appears again. Royal births and divine destinies are often preserved not by kings, but by humble figures. The fisherman's net rescues what a monarch's fear tried to destroy. Perseus grew to manhood on Seriphos, but peace did not last. Polydectes, king of the island and brother of Dictys, desired Danae and saw Perseus as an obstacle. Seeking a way to remove the young man, he announced that he wished to marry Hippodamia and demanded gifts of horses from those around him. Perseus, who had no horses to give, rashly declared that he would bring anything the king desired, even the head of the Gorgon Medusa. This boast binds the story into motion. It is not quite hubris, because Perseus does not challenge a god, but it is heroic impulsiveness, the dangerous willingness to promise beyond one's knowledge. Medusa was no ordinary enemy. Among the Gorgons, she alone was mortal, but all were dreadful beings whose gaze could turn living flesh to stone. Serpents twisted in Medusa's hair. Her face embodied a terror so complete that direct sight of it annihilated motion, blood, and life at once. To bring back her head was to attempt not merely a difficult feat, but a confrontation with the unbearable. Perseus could not succeed alone. Here, Greek heroism reveals one of its constants. Heroes act, but they do not act unaided. Athena and Hermes came to his support. Athena, who represents strategic intelligence, and Hermes, who governs cunning movement across boundaries, were precisely the powers Perseus would need. Through guidance and divine arrangement, Perseus first sought out the Graeae, the strange old sisters of the Gorgons, who shared a single eye and a single tooth among them. By seizing the eye as they passed it from one to another, Perseus forced them to reveal the location of the nymphs who guarded the magical objects necessary for his quest. This episode is full of Greek delight and cunning. Perseus does not win information by brute force alone, but through timing, opportunism, and nerve. From the nymphs he received the winged sandals that would carry him through the air, the kibisis or magic pouch in which the severed head could be safely hidden, and the helm of darkness associated with Hades, making him invisible. Hermes gave him a curved sickle or adamantine blade, while Athena provided the polished shield. Each gift matters symbolically. The hero approaches the monstrous, not by naked strength, but by equipment given through divine favor and intelligent preparation. He must move swiftly, remain unseen, strike with precision, and above all avoid direct confrontation with the gaze that destroys. When Perseus reached the place where the Gorgons slept, he did not look at Medusa directly. Instead, he watched her reflection in the mirrored shield of Athena. This is one of the most refined moments in heroic myth. Reflection, indirection, disciplined vision, these save him where ordinary courage would fail. He beheaded Medusa in her sleep, and from the blood that sprang from her severed neck emerged Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chryser, a warrior or giant figure depending on the tradition. Even in death, Medusa gives birth, another reminder that Greek myth binds monstrosity and wonder close together. The remaining Gorgons awoke and pursued Perseus, but with the helm of invisibility he escaped. Carrying the head in the pouch, he now possessed one of the most terrifying weapons in myth, the power to turn enemies to stone. Yet his story did not end with Medusa. On his way home, he came upon Andromeda, daughter of Cepheus and Cassiopeia, chained to a rock beside the sea as sacrifice to a sea monster. Her mother Cassiopeia had boasted that she or her daughter surpassed the Nereids in beauty, and Poseidon, angered by the insult, sent the monster and flood as punishment. Here, another tale of hubris meets the heroic path of Perseus. Seeing Andromeda exposed to death, Perseus desired to save her and in some versions asked for her hand in marriage in return. He fought and slew the monster, whether by sword, flight, or Medusa's head depending on the telling, and rescued her. Then, at her wedding feast, he faced Phineus, a former suitor or betrothed, and turned him and his allies to stone. Thus, the Gorgon's head became not only a trophy, but a continuing instrument of justice or vengeance, depending on how one judges the hero's actions. Perseus then returned to Seriphos, where Polydectes still harassed Danae. In righteous fury, he revealed Medusa's head and turned the tyrant and his court to stone. The fisherman Dictys was made king in his place. At last, Perseus returned toward Argos, but Acrisius, hearing that his grandson lived, fled in fear. This only delayed the prophecy. During funeral games at Larissa, Perseus threw a discus that swerved and struck Acrisius, killing him accidentally. Fate was fulfilled not through murder, but through chance within an honorable setting. That is often how Greek prophecy works. The very efforts taken to prevent it produce the conditions in which it arrives by indirect means. Perseus, however, did not seize Argos. Out of shame or reverence, he exchanged kingdoms and eventually became associated with Mycenae, one of the great centers of later heroic tradition. He stands as a hero of divine aid, measured intelligence, and successful quest, one of the rare Greek heroes whose career, though not without darkness, closes in comparative dignity. If Perseus is the elegant and early hero, Theseus is the deeply civic hero, the one through whom Greek mythology, especially Athenian mythology, imagines the making of a city's identity. Like Perseus, Theseus has a birth touched by ambiguity and greatness. His mother Aethra lay in a night shaped by both Aegeus, king of Athens, and Poseidon in many traditions, allowing the hero to claim both royal and divine paternity. Before departing, Aegeus hid a sword and sandals beneath a great rock and told Aethra that if her son grew strong enough to lift the stone and take the tokens, he should come to Athens to be acknowledged. When Theseus came of age, he lifted the stone with ease. Already he bears one of the marks of the hero, proof of identity through strength. But instead of taking the safer sea route to Athens, he chose the dangerous overland road through the isthmus, where a series of monstrous bandits and violent men made travel nearly impossible. This journey is often read as a kind of initiation through labor, a sequence in which Theseus clears the land of lawless violence. Unlike Perseus's singular quest, Theseus's path is episodic, almost architectural, laying down civilized passage through the removal of grotesque offenders. He killed Periphetes, the club-bearer, and took his weapon. He hurled Sinis, who bent pine trees to tear travelers apart, by the very method Sinis had used on others. He destroyed the Crommyonian sow, a monstrous beast that ravaged the land. He cast Siren from the cliffs where he had made strangers wash his feet only to kick them into the sea. He forced Cercyon, who challenged all to wrestling, into defeat. He killed Procrustes, who stretched or cut his guests to fit an iron bed by subjecting him to his own cruel measure. The pattern is clear and deliberate. Theseus brings justice by making criminals suffer the forms of violence they invented. Greek myth often loves this mirroring punishment. It transforms savage custom into moral lesson. When Theseus reached Athens, he found a city troubled not only by external dangers, but by internal uncertainty. Medea, now in some versions the wife or consort of Aegeus after fleeing Corinth, recognized Theseus as a threat to her own son's prospects and tried to poison him. But when Theseus produced the sword of recognition, Aegeus knew him and overturned the cup. Thus the young hero was acknowledged at court. Yet the greatest Athenian burden remained unresolved, the tribute demanded by King Minos of Crete. Because Minos' son Androgeos had died in Attica, or because of other entangled causes depending on the source, Athens was required to send youths and maidens to Crete as tribute, where they were devoured by the Minotaur in the labyrinth. The Minotaur, half man and half bull, born from the monstrous union of Pasiphae and the divine bull connected to Poseidon, is one of the purest images of unnatural power trapped within royal secrecy. The labyrinth built by Daedalus to contain him is not merely a maze but a symbol of the complexity and concealment of political horror. Athens, by paying tribute, lives under humiliation and fear. Theseus volunteered or was chosen to go among the sacrificial youths. Here the civic dimension of his heroism becomes strongest. He does not seek only his own glory. He enters the space of communal dread in order to end it. When he arrived in Crete, Ariadne, daughter of Minos and Pasiphae, fell in love with him and chose to help him. Once again, a hero's success depends upon guidance, especially from a woman who risks family loyalty for him. She gave him a sword and the famous thread by which he could trace his way back out of the labyrinth after killing the Minotaur. Theseus entered the twisting darkness, found the beast, and killed it, whether by sword, fists, or some combination depending on the version. The act is simple in outline but resonant in meaning. He overcomes not merely a monster, but a shame hidden at the heart of another kingdom, and the fear imposed upon his own city. Then, guided by Ariadne's thread, he led the young Athenians back to light and fled Crete with Ariadne herself. Yet his heroism remains mixed with failure. On the island of Naxos, he abandoned Ariadne, or was compelled to leave her by Dionysus, who claimed her for his own. Ancient sources differ, and the divergence matters. Either Theseus is faithless, wounding the woman who saved him, or he yields to divine necessity. Greek myth often preserves both moral discomfort and divine explanation side by side. The return to Athens carries the most haunting of Theseus's failures. He had promised his father Aegeus that if he survived, he would change his ship's black sails to white. In his exhaustion, or distraction, he forgot. Seeing the black sails from afar, Aegeus believed his son dead and threw himself into the sea that thereafter bore his name, the Aegean. Thus, even triumph returns burdened by loss. Theseus frees Athens, but kills his father through forgetfulness. Greek heroism is rarely clean. A great deed often arrives wrapped in a private wound. As king, Theseus became associated with the cynicism of Attica, the political unification of scattered communities under Athens. Whether this reflects historical memory transformed into myth or mythic retrojection of later civic ideals, the effect is clear. Theseus is not merely a slayer of monsters. He is imagined as founder, organizer, and shaper of collective life. He is the Athenian hero par excellence because he links violence against monsters with the establishment of order among men. Yet even he does not escape decline. Later myths tell of his friendship with Pirithous, their reckless attempts to abduct daughters of Zeus, one of them Helen while still young, the other Persephone from the underworld itself. These acts reveal the old pattern. Heroic greatness drifting toward excess. Their attempt to seize Persephone was especially mad, and in the underworld they were trapped. Heracles would later rescue Theseus, but Pirithous remained. The hero who once brought others back from the labyrinth nearly lost himself in the final maze beneath the earth. In the end, Theseus himself died, far from the full dignity one might expect, cast from a cliff on the island of Scyros or betrayed in political decline. Yet Athens later reclaimed and honored him as a civic ancestor, a hero whose bones and memory belong to the city. This too is Greek. A life morally mixed becomes ritually central. What matters is not perfection, but enduring significance. And then there is Heracles, whom the Romans later called Hercules, the greatest and most burdened of Greek heroes, the one in whom strength, suffering, service, madness, and eventual apotheosis come together with unmatched intensity. If Perseus is the hero of clever quest and Theseus of civic struggle, Heracles is the hero of labor itself, of force pushed beyond the human until it becomes almost unbearable. Heracles was born from Zeus's desire for Alcmene, wife of Amphitryon. Zeus approached her in the form of her husband and prolonged the night, a divine intrusion that led to one of mythology's most famous births. Hera, once more enraged by Zeus's infidelity, became the defining adversary of the child before he was even grown. She delayed the birth so that Eurystheus, another descendant of Perseus, would be born first and gain the kingship destined by prior oath. Here again, Greek myth shows how heroic life begins under hostile conditions arranged by divine jealousy and legal cunning. Even as an infant, Heracles showed extraordinary strength. When Hera sent serpents to kill him in his cradle, he seized and strangled them with his tiny hands, while his half-brother Iphicles cried in terror. This image of impossible strength in infancy established him at once as something beyond ordinary manhood. Yet strength alone does not make Heracles what he becomes. What marks him more deeply is suffering imposed by powers both divine and inward. As a young man, he performed many feats, studied various arts, and in one famous moralizing story encountered the choice between vice and virtue, with virtue promising a hard but glorious path. Whether this scene belongs to early myth or later ethical interpretation, it suits him. Heracles is the man of hard paths. He married Megara and had children. Then Hera struck him with madness. In that frenzy he killed his wife and children, though some versions vary the victims. When he came to himself and understood what he had done, the horror could not be escaped. Greek mythology can imagine no heavier burden. The strongest of men becomes destroyer of his own house. Seeking purification, he went to Delphi, and Apollo's oracle commanded him to serve Eurystheus, the very lesser king whose place Hera had maneuvered into prominence. This reversal is central to Heracles' story. The greatest hero must submit to a weaker man. Strength must labor under petty authority. His labors are not self-chosen quests for glory alone. They are acts of expiation, obedience, and endurance. The mighty hero is made a servant so that suffering might shape greatness. The 12 labors, though enumerated differently in some details and not always originally fixed at 12, became the core of his myth. First, he slew the Nemean lion, whose hide no weapon could pierce. Heracles strangled it with his hands and thereafter wore its skin as armor, the lion's head over his own like a second face of power. Then he killed the many-headed Hydra of Lerna, but found that each severed head produced more, until with the help of his nephew Iolaus, he cauterized the necks and ended the regenerative horror. He captured the Ceryneian hind sacred to Artemis, pursued the Erymanthian boar, cleaned the Augean stables in a single day by rerouting rivers, drove away the Stymphalian birds with their deadly bronze feathers, captured the Cretan bull, seized the man-eating mares of Diomedes, won the belt of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, drove off the cattle of Geryon from the far west, fetched the golden apples of the Hesperides, and finally descended to the underworld to bring up Cerberus himself. Each labor deserves long telling on its own, yet together they reveal the shape of Heracles' life. He confronts beasts, filth, distance, female warrior societies, death, and the edges of the world. He is not merely killing monsters. He is forcing the world into passability, stripping terror from road, swamp, stable, mountain, and underworld gate. At times he uses strength directly. At times he must use cunning or accept help. He fails in purity when he relies on others, as with Iolaus and the Hydra or Atlas and the apples, causing Eurystheus to discount some tasks and extend the count. Even the greatest hero cannot remain wholly self-sufficient. Heracles is also dangerous to those around him. His violence never becomes entirely safe. He kills in rage, sometimes unjustly, and bears the consequences. He destroys Troy in one cycle before the Trojan War. He wrestles river gods, fights centaurs, shoots his arrows in ways that set long chains of suffering in motion. One of the darkest episodes comes with Deianira, his later wife. The centaur Nessus, carrying her across a river, attempted to violate her or abduct her. Heracles shot him with a poisoned arrow tipped with hydra venom. Dying, Nessus told Deianira that his blood would ensure Heracles' fidelity if ever she feared losing him. Much later, when she believed Heracles loved another, she smeared the blood upon a robe and sent it to him. But the poisoned garment burned into his flesh, causing agony beyond endurance. Deceived by a dead enemy's cunning, Deianira became the instrument of Heracles' end. Unable to escape the torment, Heracles built or mounted his own funeral pyre on Mount Oeta and was consumed in flame. Yet here his story rises beyond ordinary heroic death. Zeus took him up to Olympus, and Heracles achieved apotheosis, becoming fully divine after death. This is unique in emphasis among major Greek heroes. Others receive honor, cult, memory, or a blessed afterlife. Heracles becomes a god. The man who labored most, suffered most, and bore the greatest contradiction of strength and servitude, crosses finally from mortality into immortality. Even Hera is reconciled with him in some traditions, giving him her daughter, Hebe, as wife. The hostility that defined his life is brought at last into peace. What do these heroes together reveal? Perseus shows divine aid joined to disciplined intelligence. Theseus shows the hero as purifier of roads, solver of civic fear, and founder shadowed by moral failure. Heracles shows labor, endurance, ruin, and glory carried farther than any man should have to carry them. None is simple. Perseus kills monsters, but also fulfills a prophecy of blood. Theseus liberates Athens, but abandons Ariadne and forgets his father. Heracles saves the world from terrors, but destroys his own family in madness and lives under recurring violence. Greek mythology refuses spotless greatness. It gives heroes magnificence and then binds that magnificence to consequence. And yet these are the figures through whom the mortal world seems most capable of standing before the gods without disappearing. They do not equal the gods, but they face what other mortals cannot face. They travel farther. They bear more. They reveal in heightened form the Greek fascination with Kleos, immortal fame won through extraordinary action. To die is unavoidable. To become unforgettable is the nearest thing mortals have to permanence. The hero's body perishes or burns, but his name enters song. Still, the age of heroes has not yet reached its highest and most tragic culmination. There remains one final and vast movement in Greek myth, a war in which nearly all the great powers of the heroic world converge, where gods take sides, pride consumes kingdoms, beauty destroys peace, and after victory comes wandering, ruin, and the long dimming of the mythic age itself. By the time the great heroes had walked the earth, slain monsters, founded cities, crossed seas, and descended alive into places where ordinary mortals could not go, the world of Greek mythology had grown crowded with memory. The gods were fully themselves. The mortal race had learned labor, grief, reverence, and punishment. Great houses had risen and darkened under curses. Heroes had won names that would outlast their bones. What remained was not one more isolated adventure, but the great convergence, the war toward which so many divine rivalries, mortal ambitions, oaths, and prophecies seemed already to be leaning. In the Trojan War, Greek mythology gathers its full force. Beauty becomes catastrophe. Honor becomes bloodshed. Gods descend into human conflict not as distant judges but as partisans. And when the war is finally won, victory itself opens into wandering, ruin, and the slow fading of the mythic age. The roots of the war stretch back before Helen, before Paris, before even the first launching of ships. Greek myth, as always, prefers causes layered over causes. One famous beginning lies in the wedding of Peleus and Thetis. Peleus was a mortal king, though noble and heroic, and Thetis a sea nymph of extraordinary beauty and power, desired once even by Zeus and Poseidon. But a prophecy had declared that Thetis would bear a son greater than his father. The gods, remembering too well the old history of succession and overthrow, stepped back from the danger. Instead, Thetis was given in marriage to a mortal, and from that decision, the future of Troy and Greece would unfold. Their wedding was grand, attended by the gods, a feast of divine and mortal splendor. But one presence was excluded: Eris, goddess of strife. No insult to a divine power remains idle for long. Eris came anyway and cast among the guests a golden apple marked for the fairest. At once the harmony of the wedding was poisoned. Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite each claimed the prize. Zeus, unwilling to judge between powers so dangerous in pride and consequence, delegated the decision. The matter was placed in the hands of Paris, also called Alexandros, a prince of Troy who had been exposed at birth because of ominous prophecies, but survived and grew to youth as a shepherd on Mount Ida. Again, Greek mythology shows that great destinies often begin in concealment and return later to the center of power. The judgment of Paris is among the clearest examples in all myth of beauty turning into history. Hera offered him kingship and dominion. Athena offered victory in war and wisdom. Aphrodite offered the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chose Aphrodite. It was a choice not only of desire over power and strategy, but of the immediate spell of beauty over the long responsibilities of rule. Aphrodite kept her promise. The most beautiful woman in the world was Helen, wife of Menelaus, king of Sparta, and daughter in some traditions of Zeus and Leda, born from the gods' union with Leda in the form of a swan. Helen was not merely lovely in the ordinary sense. She was mythically beautiful, a beauty that could unsettle treaties, bend judgment, and become the visible center of a world's destruction. Before her marriage, Helen had been courted by many kings and princes of Greece. Her father Tyndareus, fearing that rejected suitors might turn violent against the chosen husband, required them all to swear an oath that they would defend the selected marriage against any future wrong. Menelaus became Helen's husband, and the oath slept quietly until Paris came to Sparta, either as guest or diplomatic visitor, and departed with Helen. The tradition varies on whether Helen went willingly, was seduced, abducted, compelled by Aphrodite, or moved in some mixture of agency and divine pressure. Greek myth often preserves the ambiguity because Helen is not easy to contain within one moral frame. She is victim, prize, woman, queen, cause, excuse, and symbol all at once. When Menelaus discovered her loss, he called upon the old oath. Then the kings and heroes of Greece began to gather. Agamemnon, brother of Menelaus and king of Mycenae, assumed leadership of the expedition, not because he was the greatest warrior, but because he commanded the greatest power. Odysseus of Ithaca, clever and reluctant, had once pretended madness to avoid the war, but his plow trick was exposed when Palamedes placed the infant Telemachus before the blade, and Odysseus swerved aside. Achilles, son of Peleus and Theseus, greatest of warriors, was still young and in some traditions hidden among women on Syros by his mother to prevent his participation, since prophecy told that he might win everlasting fame at Troy but die young. Yet he too was discovered and drawn into the enterprise. Ajax the Greater, vast and powerful, Nestor, aged and wise, Diomedes, fierce and capable, many others gathered. Greece became an armed oath sailing east. Even the launching of the fleet was marked by divine demand. At Aulis, the winds failed. Agamemnon had offended Artemis, whether by boasting of his hunting skill or by killing a sacred deer depending on the version, and the goddess held the ships in port. The seer Calchas declared that only the sacrifice of Agamemnon's daughter Iphigenia would appease Artemis. Here the war reveals its cost before it begins. A father leading kings to recover his brother's wife must first surrender his own child. In some traditions, Iphigenia is actually sacrificed. In others, Artemis saves her at the last moment and substitutes a deer, carrying the girl away to Taurus as priestess. Either way, the stain remains. Greek victory begins in the house of Atreus with blood and deceit, and that blood will later call for more. At Troy, Priam ruled as king, old and dignified, father to many children, among them Hector and Paris. If Paris is beauty without judgment, Hector is duty made flesh. He is the great defender of Troy, husband of Andromache, father of Astyanax, warrior not for private vanity but for city, family, and obligation. In many ways, Hector is the noblest figure in the war because he fights not for the reckless act that caused the conflict, but for the home that must now endure its consequences. Troy itself stands in Greek imagination not merely as an enemy city, but as a place of wealth, walls, lineage, and doomed grandeur. The Trojans are never rendered as faceless villains. Their humanity is part of what gives the war its tragic weight. The gods took sides. Hera and Athena, insulted by Paris's judgment, favored the Greeks. Aphrodite supported Troy, especially Paris. Apollo often aided the Trojans as well, whether from reverence for their city or in response to Greek offenses. Poseidon, too, despite old ties to Troy through the building of its walls, often leaned toward the Greeks. Ares and Artemis moved within the conflict in shifting alignments. Zeus, though trying at times to maintain a larger balance or honor certain promises, was continually pulled by competing petitions and affections. This divine participation is essential. The Trojan War is never merely political or military. It is the place where human conflict becomes transparent to the rivalries of heaven. The Iliad, the greatest poetic monument of the war, does not attempt to tell the whole 10-year conflict. Instead, it focuses on one decisive segment, the wrath of Achilles. That choice is deeply revealing. Greek mythology understands that the fate of cities can hinge not only on armies and walls, but on the inner storms of one exceptional man. Achilles, son of the sea nymph Thetis and the mortal Peleus, is the supreme warrior, beautiful, terrible, swift, and marked from birth by prophecy. He is offered a choice: a long, obscure life at home, or a short life crowned by imperishable fame. He chooses fame. This is one of the defining heroic decisions in all Greek myth. Achilles knows glory and death are bound together, and he accepts the bargain. Yet when the Iliad opens, Achilles is not triumphing in battle but withdrawing from it. Agamemnon has taken Briseis, a captive woman awarded to Achilles as a war prize, after being forced to return his own captive Chryseis to appease Apollo. The quarrel is over honor. In heroic culture, visible signs of esteem matter immensely. By taking Briseis, Agamemnon publicly diminishes Achilles. Achilles responds not with submission, but with catastrophic anger. He withdraws from the fighting and asks his mother Thetis to beg Zeus to let the Greeks suffer until they learn how much they need him. It is an extraordinary request. The greatest Greek hero asks for his own side to bleed for the sake of his wounded honor. This is the moral brilliance of Greek epic. Achilles is both justified and destructive. Agamemnon is arrogant and politically disastrous. Neither side of the quarrel is clean. Meanwhile, men die. As Achilles remains apart, the Trojans press the Greeks hard. Hector shines in battle, driving the enemy back toward their ships. The conflict grows more desperate, and the Greek camp trembles under pressure. Yet Achilles will not yield. This stubbornness, terrible and magnificent, defines him. He is not a soldier among soldiers, but a heroic absolute. And absolutes in Greek myth are dangerous, even when they are splendid. His friend Patroclus, unable to bear the suffering, begs Achilles to let him enter battle wearing Achilles' armor. Achilles agrees, hoping at least to drive the Trojans back from the ships, but warns Patroclus not to press too far. Patroclus does press too far. Inflamed by success, he advances, and Apollo strikes him, leaving him vulnerable to Hector, who kills him and takes the armor. This death changes everything. Achilles' grief is among the most powerful emotions in Greek literature. His rage against Agamemnon had been terrible, but his rage after Patroclus is nearly inhuman. Mourning and fury become one force. Reconciled outwardly with Agamemnon, he receives new armor forged by Hephaestus, including the famous shield depicting the whole world in miniature, cities in peace and war, labor, harvest, dancing, law, sea, and stars. The shield matters because it places Achilles' personal wrath inside the totality of human life. He fights not against a blank background, but against the entire ordered world he is about to disturb. Returning to battle, Achilles becomes almost elemental. He kills without mercy. He chokes the river Scamander with bodies until the river itself rises against him. He drives the Trojans back into the city and finally faces Hector outside the walls. Hector, for all his greatness, is doomed. He runs around the city 3 times before Athena, deceiving him in the form of his brother, helps trap him. Achilles kills him and then, in one of the war's darkest acts, ties the body to his chariot and drags it before Troy. Here, heroic grief becomes sacrilege. Achilles' greatness does not protect him from moral collapse. Indeed, his greatness intensifies it. Yet Greek mythology will not leave him there. Priam, old king of Troy, comes by night into the Greek camp guided by Hermes and kneels before Achilles, kissing the hands that killed his son. He asks for Hector's body. In this scene, the war suddenly becomes still and mortality stands naked between 2 enemies. Priam reminds Achilles of Peleus, the father who will never see his son return. Achilles weeps with him. For a moment, grief overcomes rage. Hector's body is returned. This act of pity is one of the most profound recoveries in Greek myth. Even in the greatest warrior, even after desecration and bloodlust, something human can still answer the sorrow of another. The Iliad ends before Troy falls, but the larger mythic cycle continues. Achilles himself does not survive the war much longer. Paris, aided by Apollo in many traditions, kills him with an arrow, often said to strike his vulnerable heel, though that detail is more emphasized in later retellings than in the earliest surviving sources. However he dies, the truth remains. The greatest warrior cannot outfight fate. Achilles wins immortal fame and loses the long life he knowingly abandoned. His arms then become objects of contest between Ajax and Odysseus. When Odysseus is awarded them for his eloquence and strategic merit, Ajax's pride collapses into madness. He slaughters livestock believing them enemies, then, realizing his humiliation, kills himself. Thus, another giant of the Greek host is lost not to Trojan spear, but to wounded honor. The end of Troy requires not only force, but cunning. Here, Odysseus comes fully to the center. If Achilles is heroic force at its highest pitch, Odysseus is heroic intelligence in its most flexible form. The famous stratagem of the wooden horse, though told more fully in later sources than in the Iliad itself, becomes the decisive turning point. The Greeks pretend to sail away, leaving behind a giant wooden horse as a supposed offering. The Trojans, divided in judgment, bring it into the city despite warnings from Laocoon, who distrusts Greek gifts, and from Cassandra, cursed to speak true prophecy that no one believes. By night, the hidden Greek warriors emerge, open the gates, and Troy is destroyed. The sack of Troy is not glorious in the simple sense. Priam is killed at the altar, women are enslaved, Andromache loses Hector and her son. Astyanax, in later traditions, is hurled from the walls lest he grow to avenge his city. Cassandra is violated even at Athena's altar. Temples burn. A civilization ends in fire and lament. Greek mythology never lets victory erase atrocity. Indeed, the winners often sow their own disasters in the very act of conquest. The house of Atreus, already polluted, returns home only to further bloodshed. Agamemnon comes back to Mycenae and is murdered by Clytemnestra and Aegisthus, avenging Iphigenia and other wrongs in a chain that will continue through Orestes. Menelaus eventually returns with Helen. Neoptolemus, son of Achilles, wins reputation but also darkness. The victors carry Troy home inside themselves. And then there is Odysseus. His return, the Nostos that should have been straightforward, becomes one of the longest and richest journeys in all mythology. Odysseus is king of Ithaca, husband of Penelope, father of Telemachus, and the most cunning of the Greeks. But intelligence does not exempt him from suffering. If anything, it exposes him to longer testing. He leaves Troy alive, but the sea between him and home becomes an education in endurance, temptation, loss, and identity. Poseidon, angered because Odysseus blinded his son the Cyclops Polyphemus, opposes his journey. Athena supports him, but even divine favor cannot shorten all the roads fate opens. One of the earliest and most revealing episodes is the encounter with the Cicones, where initial victory gives way to costly delay because Odysseus's men will not depart in time. Then comes the land of the Lotus Eaters, where forgetfulness itself becomes a danger. Those who eat the lotus lose the desire for home. Already the Odyssey declares its theme. Nostos is not merely travel but fidelity of memory. To return, one must continue wanting to return. The Cyclops episode shows Odysseus at both his best and worst. Trapped in the cave of Polyphemus, who devours several of his men, Odysseus devises a brilliant escape. He gives the Cyclops wine, tells him his name is Nobody, blinds him with a heated stake while he sleeps, and then escapes beneath the bellies of sheep. It is an extraordinary triumph of mind over brute force. But once safely departing, Odysseus cannot resist revealing his true name in pride. That boast allows Polyphemus to call upon Poseidon, and the sea god becomes his relentless enemy. Greek myth thus remains consistent. Intelligence saves, pride prolongs suffering. Aeolus gives Odysseus a bag containing all adverse winds, leaving only the favorable breeze for Ithaca. Yet his crew, suspecting treasure and unable to trust their leader, open it while Odysseus sleeps. The storm bursts out and blows them back. Human weakness undoes divine assistance. Later, the Laestrygonians destroy nearly all the fleet. Circe turns men into swine, though Hermes aids Odysseus in resisting her spells. He remains with her for a year, suspended between pleasure and delay, until his men remind him again of home. Desire, like forgetfulness, threatens Nostos by softening its urgency. At Circe's instruction, Odysseus undertakes a journey to the realm of the dead. There he consults Tiresias and encounters shades of the departed, among them his mother, Agamemnon, Ajax, and Achilles. This underworld episode is essential because it reveals the cost of glory in the clearest terms. Achilles, greatest of warriors, admits that he would rather be a servant among the living than king of all the dead. The statement cuts to the heart of Greek heroism. Fame is magnificent, but life, however humble, remains precious. Odysseus, hearing this, carries forward a more tempered heroic wisdom than the battlefield alone could teach. His journey continues past the Sirens, whose song offers knowledge so alluring that it destroys those who approach. Odysseus, eager to hear but not perish, has himself bound to the mast while his men plug their ears. This is perhaps the purest image of disciplined curiosity in Greek myth. the desire to know coupled with self-binding against ruin. Then comes Scylla and Charybdis, one a devouring monster, the other a swallowing whirlpool, between which no perfect passage exists. Odysseus must accept limited loss. Greek mythology here acknowledges that some choices are tragic not because of moral failure, but because the world sometimes offers no untouched route. On the island of Helios, despite warnings, Odysseus's starving men slaughter the sacred cattle of the sun. Zeus destroys the ship in punishment. All perish except Odysseus, who drifts to Ogygia, where the nymph Calypso keeps him for years, offering him immortality if he will stay. It is one of the greatest temptations in myth. Odysseus, who has suffered so much, is offered release from aging and death. Yet he refuses in the end, longing not for abstract immortality but for home, wife, bed, land, and the mortal identity that is his own. Here, Greek mythology reaches one of its deepest recognitions. The human good is not simply endless life. It is belonging. Odysseus chooses Ithaca over eternity without Penelope. When he finally reaches home, aided by the Phaeacians and guided by Athena, Ithaca is not at peace. Suitors have filled his hall, consuming his wealth and pressing Penelope to remarry. Telemachus has grown into uncertain manhood under their shadow. Penelope herself has endured through intelligence equal in its own way to Odysseus's, delaying remarriage by weaving and unweaving a shroud. Her faithfulness is not passive waiting, but active cunning, a counterpart to her husband's own. Disguised as a beggar, Odysseus enters his house, tests loyalties, reveals himself gradually, and in the great hall slaughters the suitors with Telemachus and a few faithful servants. The violence is severe, but within the moral world of the epic it restores order, household, kingship, and the sacred bond of marriage. At last he reveals himself to Penelope, who tests him one final time through the secret of their immovable bed. Recognition is complete not through sentiment alone, but through shared knowledge of what they built together. And yet even the Odyssey does not feel like a simple restoration of the old world. Too much has been lost. Too many men lie dead far from home. Too many houses have been broken by murder, infidelity, sacrifice, pride, or grief. The heroic age has achieved its full greatness and shown its full cost. The sons of heroes will live in a diminished light. The gods will remain, but they will intervene in a world increasingly shaped by memory rather than immediate presence. Myth itself begins to look backward from here, as though knowing that the highest flame has already burned. This fading is not narrated in one single story, but it is felt across the tradition. Heracles has become divine. Achilles is dead. Ajax is dead. Hector is dead. Troy has fallen. Odysseus has returned, but only after losing nearly everyone who sailed with him. Agamemnon is murdered. Orestes will avenge him in another terrible cycle. Theseus declines. The great houses are stained. What remains for later generations is inheritance. Ruined walls, heroic tombs, songs, cults, and warnings. The age when gods and mortals mingled constantly in visible drama seems to recede. And that is one of the final truths of Greek mythology. It is not only a collection of stories about gods and monsters, it is a memory of a world more intense than ordinary history, a world where every city had a sacred beginning, every disaster reached upward toward Olympus, and every extraordinary human life brushed against fate in a visible way. The myths know they belong to an earlier time, a heroic time, and by telling of its end, they explain why the present world feels thinner, more ordinary, more bound to labor and law than to immediate wonder. The sacred has not vanished. but it has withdrawn from constant spectacle into ritual, poetry, festival, and remembrance. Still, the myths endure because they were never only about a lost age. Their truths remain close to human experience. Chaos gives way to order, but order is never free from violence. Power fears succession. Desire creates and destroys. Intelligence saves and endangers. Grief changes the seasons. Pride draws punishment. Labor shapes greatness. Beauty starts wars. Home is harder to recover than glory is to win. Mortality gives meaning to fame and tenderness to return. The gods, however immortal, remain mirrors in which human beings see their own loves, rages, ambitions, and vulnerabilities magnified beyond measure. So the story of Greek mythology ends not in silence, but in echo. On Olympus, the gods remain deathless, though they watch a world no longer crowded with the same kind of heroes. Beneath the earth, Hades and Persephone still rule. The sea still belongs to Poseidon, the sky to Zeus. Athena's owl still sees in the dark. Apollo's lyre still sounds through prophecy and song. Dionysus still loosens the boundaries of the self. Demeter still teaches the earth to bear grain after loss. And in the minds of those who tell and hear these stories, Achilles still runs shining toward his fate. Persephone still rises from the underworld. Prometheus still suffers for fire. And Odysseus still looks westward across the sea toward home.